alcohol charges. They can either find Michael Jackson not guilty on all counts, or they can find him not guilty of using alcohol to commit molestation, but guilty of providing alcohol to someone who is underage. That is a misdemeanor, and many people think that if this jury finds him not guilty across the board, they may find him guilty of providing alcohol to minors. The sentence there is a year in county jail. The prospect of the chance that the judge would remand him to custody on just that would be very slim. He would most likely be able to go free on bail until he is sentenced. There's a wide range in terms of what this jury can do and what this judge can do when it comes time for sentencing.
Ted Rowlands, I know you will stand by for us. Kendall Coffey, legal analyst, also standing by. And, of course, our Jeffrey Toobin, our CNN political analyst. And what we want to do is continue with CNN's live coverage. That verdict in about half an hour. Our coverage continues right now with Wolf Blitzer.
Thanks very much, Candy. About 30 minutes or so from now, give or take a few minutes, the verdict will be in. Michael Jackson, guilty or not guilty, the various options before this jury. They've been deliberating now for the past couple of weeks. Jeffrey Toobin is with us here in our Washington studio. You've been watching this trial very closely. Jeffrey, give our viewers a sense right now of the enormity of what is about to happen in the life of Michael Jackson.
Well, I mean, it's really simple, Wolf. You have one of the top, I would say, dozen most famous people in the world who perhaps a half hour from now may be in criminal custody, maybe go into prison. I mean, as Ted Rowlands has said earlier, for several of these crimes, if he is convicted, it is very likely that his bail will be revoked if he is convicted, and he will receive a sentence of many years in prison. So Michael Jackson's freedom is not only at stake in some abstract sense, but concretely, you know, he may be in custody before the hour is out.
And so if he is convicted on some of the more serious charges, the felony charges against him, he could be sent to jail right away. He wouldn't necessarily be released on bail as the appeal process begins.
Absolutely not. He will not be released pending appeal. However, his lawyer will argue for him to be released pending an appeal, and I expect a lengthy and passionate argument by Tom Mesereau if Jackson is convicted for granting him bail. But based on the way California law usually operates, given the seriousness of this crime, he will almost certainly be put in custody right away.
Which would be a dramatic change in the lifestyle of this pop star. Clearly something that he is not necessarily going to be able to accept easily, given his lifestyle, given his mentality, given what he's gone through over these years.
And given his physical condition. You know, one of the things that was striking to me, having seen him at the beginning of the trial and at the end of the trial, is how Michael Jackson has physically deteriorated over the course of this trial. Remember, last January was the time that he hopped up on top of that SUV and did a little dance for his fans. Now, whatever you think of that little incident, it took a physically fit man to do it. He is a shell of that man a year and a half later. He walks with difficulty. He seems medicated. His skin is a terrible gray pallor. The deterioration in Michael Jackson has been considerable, and if you think about the possibility of prison, you know, that could accelerate.
Stand by for a moment, Jeff. Brooke Anderson's over at Neverland Ranch in California. We see some aerial shots of some cars. I assume, Brooke, he's getting ready to leave Neverland to head over to the courthouse in Santa Maria. Is that what we're seeing right now?
Hi there, Wolf. I believe you were asking me if we're getting ready to see Michael Jackson leaving Neverland, and indeed we are. We are looking at aerial pictures of Jackson's motorcade. We see the black SUVs, which we have seen so often coming in and out of this gate during the trial and in and out during deliberations this past week and a half. It has been more than 30 minutes. It has been more than 30 minutes since the judge let everyone know that a verdict has come down. It's about a 30-mile drive from here to the courthouse, so it's about a 30 to 40-minute drive. So he needs to leave pretty soon to make that deadline of 1 hour. We are waiting there. There aren't too many fans out here. A couple fans are here. A lot of photographers are here. Everyone just waiting for the gates to open and for that motorcade to exit and head to Santa Maria.
Well, I think it's clear to say that they're not going to read the verdict until he is inside that courthouse. in Santa Maria. They're going to wait for him to show up. Clearly, that could take at least a half an hour, Jeffrey Toobin, for him to make that drive from Neverland to Santa Maria.
Well, I mean, I think this is an example of how Michael Jackson's life may be about to change. You know, throughout this whole trial, there's been a lot of waiting for Michael, and the trial starts when Michael arrives, and he's getting ready. And you know what? Once you're in custody, you don't have the luxury of people waiting around for you. I mean, I know, I've been out there, I know the distances. There is no way he is going to get there by 4:30 Eastern time, but they will not read the verdict, as you point out, until he returns. So I think this is just an example of perhaps diva-like behavior that when you're in the custody of the California prison system is no longer an option.
I had heard, Jeffrey, that they were going to give the news media, the public, a 60 to 90-minute advance notification after the jury had reached the verdict. They would have 60 to 90 minutes to get everyone in place in order for the verdict to be read in front of the defendant, in this particular case, Michael Jackson. So he might make that 90-minute deadline, if in fact there is a 90-minute deadline.
He might make 90, but given the way the tension surrounding these sorts of events, things tend to slow down a little bit, and I would be surprised if they make the 90. And certainly they won't make the 60.
The 4:30 Eastern, it was the 60-minute deadline, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. on the West Coast, the 90-minute deadline. If, in fact, there is a 90-minute deadline, there's been some conflicting reports I've seen whether they would have 60 to 90 minutes to get going. The judge was irritated early on. I believe the first appearance by Michael Jackson when he showed up late. Presumably the judge would be irritated this time, but it's I don't know if it would be much of a deal at this late stage in the process.
Yeah. If Michael Jackson is convicted, the least of his problems is being a little late to court.
The whole nature. Let's review some of these charges against him. Count 1 is a felony violation of conspiracy involving 28 individual overt acts of child abduction, false imprisonment, and extortion. Those are very serious charges as we watch these pictures from Neverland, the black vehicles, the SUVs, the motorcade that's about to leave to head over to the courthouse. That first count is potentially the end as far as Michael Jackson's freedom is concerned.
All of the felony counts put him in great jeopardy. Count 1, as people listen, I think it is safe to say it was the weakest count against Michael Jackson. The charge, in layman's terms, was that Jackson and the people who worked for him conspired to keep the accuser and his family essentially prisoner in Neverland, around Neverland, in the period after the Martin Bashir documentary ran in 2003, to control them, to control the response to this documentary. The evidence against Jackson, I think it's safe to say, was very thin. There were other people involved in perhaps controlling the movements of the accuser's family, but there was precious little evidence that Jackson himself participated in that, and I think Jackson has the best chance of acquittal on that count.
The counts 2 through 5 involved lewd and lascivious acts upon a minor under 14 years of age, counts 2 through 5.
That's the heart of the case. Those 4 counts are child molestation. The first 2 counts are based on the testimony of the accuser himself. The second 2 counts are based on the testimony of the accuser's brother, who claimed to see the accuser being molested by Jackson. But child molestation, counts 2 through 5, that's the heart of the case. If he's convicted of those carry the likely longest prison sentences, and I think, that's Jackson's greatest jeopardy.
We see the motorcade, some cars beginning to move. I think that's what we're seeing. The gates of Neverland Ranch have now opened. I suspect we're going to see some of those cars bringing Michael Jackson and his entourage from the Neverland Ranch, about 30 miles or so, to Santa Maria. That's where the courthouse is for the reading of the verdict in all of these counts. We'll see as this motorcade, I suspect, there it is. Those are the black SUVs. We assume Michael Jackson is inside one of those vehicles. They'll be driving out. In the past, do they get police escorts? Do you know, Jeff, when you've been out there?
They have not had police escorts for most of the journey. For when they get into Santa Maria, there's sometimes police cars that have escorted them. But one thing that's interesting to remember as we see this highly dramatic conclusion to the trial is that during the trial, there were many days when there were very few spectators and not a lot of attention, so there was really no need for a police escort. Here, of course, you have hundreds more people present around the courtroom than were there during the 16 weeks of the trial.
Count 6 involves an attempt to conduct a lewd act against a minor.
That's attempted child molestation. That is basically related to counts 2, 3, 4, and 5, part of the child molestation counts that are the heart of the case.
And then counts 7 through 10 are felony charges of administering an intoxicating agent to a minor in order to facilitate a felony. That's basically giving a minor an alcoholic beverage.
Right, giving a minor an alcoholic beverage in order to commit a felony. And what's interesting about counts 7 through 10 is that there is the possibility of what's called a lesser included offense. The jury could acquit Michael Jackson of the felony versions of providing alcohol to a minor, but convict him of misdemeanors. And if Michael Jackson is only convicted of misdemeanors, I don't think he will have his bail revoked, and I think he will count this trial as a win.
The court is now suggesting the verdict will be read at 4:45 Eastern, 1:45 p.m. on the West Coast, but we see this motorcade beginning slowly to move. I see 2 vehicles, 3 vehicles in this motorcade. I don't know how many vehicles altogether there will be, but it doesn't look like they have yet gone through the main gate at Neverland Ranch. On the left part of the screen, we see the ranch itself, the motorcade winding through, and here they come. These are the vehicles going through the gate, the main gate at Neverland. Now they'll have, what, about 30 miles or so till they get to the courthouse in Santa Maria.
About 30 miles, and you notice that shot just before they came through the gates. The scale of Neverland is just really hard to describe. It is approximately 3,000 acres, this estate, complete with an amusement park and a zoo and many buildings. This is the vast, unbelievable lifestyle that Michael Jackson is leaving behind, and of course we need, it may well be for the last time.
I see 4 vehicles now. Maybe there are more, but at least in this picture, this aerial shot that we're getting, we see 4 vehicles moving. They don't look like they're going 60 miles an hour, which would give them about a half an hour drive if they're going 30 miles. So this could be delayed. Right now, we're being told about 4:45. That's when the court has set the verdict to be read, 4:45 p.m. Eastern, 1:45 on the West Coast. We'll see if that actually happens. It looks like there are 4 vehicles that's being chased by a motorcycle at the very end of that motorcade. We don't know if that motorcycle is part of the formal motorcade that's taking Michael Jackson and his team to the courthouse, or that could be a paparazzi chasing them as well, having seen how they operate on the motorcycles over the years. That's very possible as well. As we take a look at this motorcade winding its way from Neverland, from the Neverland Ranch over to the courthouse, we have to get a sense of who is going to be joining Michael Jackson once that verdict is read. Jeffrey, you've spent some time inside that courtroom. Give us a little flavor. Besides his lead defense attorney, who else is going to be there?
Well, I don't know who will be there today. There has been sort of a rotating cast of family members. The people there most often are his mother and father. Catherine and Joe Jackson have been there often. 3 of his brothers, Randy, Tito, and Jermaine, have often been in court. So 4 of the 5, Jackson 5, have often been in court. And his sister LaToya and his sister Janet have been in court occasionally. More of them have been present in court for the big moments of the trial, so I suspect some or all of that group will be there today.
Ted Rowlands is outside the courthouse in Santa Maria. Ted, I suspect there must be an enormous amount of anticipation and excitement that has developed over this past half hour as we watch these live pictures of Michael Jackson's motorcade making its way from the Neverland Ranch to Santa Maria and the courthouse.
Oh, clearly the fans that are gathered out here, Wolf, are in a sort of a frenzy. They're chanting, and there's a bit of worrisome faces, too. This is a big deal for them, of course, and a big deal for Michael Jackson. And you could feel the anticipation and the nervousness, if you will, too, surrounding the outside of this courthouse. Folks have been outside basically holding vigil since the jury got this case a week ago Friday, and they have been out here day and night through deliberations, waiting and chanting and taking turns leading the troops, and now this is it, and you can definitely feel it outside the courthouse. You know what, Michael Jackson has a lot of people that have vocally stood up and supported him. I noticed when we were showing the shots of the motorcade leaving Neverland Ranch, early on in the shot, you saw a string of employees that were all lined up arm in arm as the 4 SUVs drove by near the main house heading towards the gate. One thing is for sure, they're not going to make it here by 1:30. The court has obviously changed the reading to 1:45, and if it takes them longer to get here, they'll change it again. The court has tried to get this verdict read as soon as possible so that it does not allow more people to come here to the courthouse, but clearly they are going to wait for Michael Jackson.
You know that territory quite well, and as we see this motorcade driving, we just lost the picture briefly from these aerial shots that we're getting. Is there any way they can make it there in a half an hour? They literally only have passed 3 minutes. They left the main gate at Neverland. How realistic, how long will it take them, do you suspect, Ted?
It should take them 40 to 45 minutes. That's assuming that they're not stopped for any reason. It is, they're on a sort of an off road right now. It's an off freeway, which, you know, you're lucky to do about 50 miles an hour, especially when you have 4 SUVs trailing each other. Clearly, it's going to take them 40, 45 minutes at best, and it may take them a little bit longer depending on what they encounter once they get close to Santa Maria. Each day, as the motorcade approaches the city, a group of motorcycle cops here in Santa Maria go meet the motorcade and escort them through traffic lights around the courthouse. They say they do it for security, and I think mainly they do it for Santa Maria residents, not necessarily for Michael Jackson, so that they can get him in and out with as quickly as possible so he doesn't hold up traffic. So, you know, I think that it'll take 40 to 45 minutes at best, and I think that the court knows that, and they will wait patiently for him to arrive.
Do you know, Ted, if that lead vehicle, that white vehicle we're seeing in these pictures now, is a police car, or is it just an average person who's driving along on this 2-lane highway and just happens to be leading this Michael Jackson motorcade?
I don't know, and clearly it could be either one. If it is law enforcement, it is an unmarked car. It could be a news organization, someone with a camera, or just a fan wanting to get into the middle of it. And it looks like they're leading the group at this point. No way of knowing until we get a ground shot of that vehicle.
It looks like it's they're not moving very quickly either. I suspect if they're saying 4:45 Eastern, 1:45 Pacific, it'll probably go back to 5 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock on the West Coast. There you see the whole motorcade stopped as it's about to make a right turn, onto another highway heading towards Santa Maria. The motorcade continuing along this way. The makeup of the jury, Jeffrey Toobin, what, if anything, can we surmise from the makeup of the jury?
Well, it's eight women and 4 men, largely middle class. No African Americans on the jury, which has drawn some notice. But Santa Barbara County has very few African Americans, so it's not all that unusual to have an all African, having no African Americans on the jury. One interesting thing about this jury was that even though there were, I believe, 6 or 8 alternates throughout this long trial, not one juror left the jury, which certainly in my experience is very unusual. All of these jurors came every day. They obviously had a stake in the outcome, were very serious, were very meticulous about their work. Many of the jurors took extensive notes, filling several notebooks. But as for drawing any conclusion about the verdict from the makeup of the jury, that's more predicting than I'll be able to do.
Ted, do you want to weigh in on the jury? Any thoughts? That you've been speaking to a lot of legal analysts out there on the scene, the makeup of this jury and any inclinations they may or may not have?
And one of the things that is very noticeable watching this jury is that they get along. They seem to joke around at the appropriate times. They're serious at the appropriate times, and they all seem to be together when there is some sort of an inside joke that was half told in the jury room and the rest of it in the courtroom. They're all in on it. A lot of times in juries you see factions and you see one individual who's doing his own thing or her thing. Not in this case. It really, they seemed as though they were getting along, and I think that we'll find, if and when they talk about their experience, that that was the case. And I'm sure it would have helped the deliberative process a great deal. Obviously, they have come to a verdict. It is not a hung jury. We haven't seen any hints of any problems with this jury, and I think that was evident day in and day out watching these men and women work together, and some of it was very, very tedious, some of it very, very emotional. Through it all, they all seem to be one group.
Jeffrey Toobin, in terms of the amount of hours, the amount of days this jury has considered this verdict, what, if anything, goes through your mind? Because early on, when we spoke, we knew it was going to take several days, given how long the actual trial lasted.
Well, you know, I think this is about what you would think of as an average length of deliberation for a case of this duration. You know, this was a complicated case involving lots of different charges, and, you know, one thing I think the Jackson camp was hoping was for an instant verdict, because given the complexity of this case, if they had come back after a day or even 2 days, that would have shown that they simply rejected the government's theory, because there is no way you could work your way through 16 weeks of testimony, 10 different charges, in a day or two. Now, having gone on for about 6 days, it is enough time to go through all the evidence. This is sort of a reasonable amount of time, and I think that has got to be cause for concern in the Jackson camp, because there is enough time to have gone through all the evidence and said, there's enough here to convict him.
And Ted Rowlands, as you well remember, since you were inside the courtroom for much of this, including the end of this trial, that videotape of the accuser, the young boy accusing Michael Jackson, that was a powerful way for the prosecution to end its case.
Yes, it was, in that the jury got to hear the accuser and the accusations again. It had been months since the accuser took the stand, and when the prosecution was allowed by this judge to play this first interview that the accuser had with sheriff deputies, it brought it all back. It sort of washed out the conspiracy, which was a very difficult charge to try to prove, and it brought it back to, this is a case about a man who was accused of molesting a boy. That said, Thomas Mesereau, in his close, used that tape as well and encouraged jurors to go and watch the tape and look for inconsistencies in the tape, saying that the tape is exactly what you would expect if a young man was lying. And that is exactly the route that Mesereau took from the very beginning. He pulled no punches. He said, this family and this child is making it up. They're trying to extort Michael Jackson. So jurors could look at the tape both ways once they're in the jury room. That said, in the courtroom, yes, I think it was effective for the prosecution.
Well, I was in the courtroom when Ron Zonen, the prosecutor, played that final videotape. And you know, the thing that hit me is that this was a trial with more than 100 witnesses, you know, for four months long. But the simplicity of that closing was very effective and very powerful, because what he said to the jury was, if you believe this boy, if you believe what this child is saying, or he was a child then, he's not exactly a child now, he's 16, this case is over. All the jury needs to believe is one witness, and that was the witness that they closed with, and it was powerful stuff.
Robert Shapiro is the famed criminal defense attorney who represented O.J. Simpson and knows what is going through the minds of a criminal defense attorney in this particular case. What, about 30 minutes or so we're estimating, Bob, before the verdict is read. Give us a little flavor of what must be going through the defense team's mind right now.
I'll tell you what's going through my mind right now is a high anxiety, anxious, palpitations, because I followed the case and I'm interested in the case, and I can put myself in the same chair as some of the lawyers. What this is, Wolf, is this is going to the doctor to get the results of a biopsy. This is the Kentucky Derby when you have a photo finish. It's the Super Bowl when there's an instant replay of the winning touchdown. There's just no way to describe it.
Do you have a sense, based on the 7 days, 32 hours, that the jury deliberated, the makeup of the jury, 8 women, 4 men, the length of the trial, what we might anticipate right now, Bob? You know California law, you know California juries. You're one of the best in the business.
You know, not my personal opinion, but what I think the jury will do in this case is render a verdict that will not have Michael Jackson singing "Beat It" today. I think he's going to be convicted.
And on the basis of one specific piece of evidence, or the whole nature, the whole trial?
Well, first, the little boy was the first witness to testify, and as Jeff Toobin has told us, the last witness to testify. He testified without cross-examination, which is unheard of in closing a case, because he was allowed to testify by videotape. And his testimony is uncontroverted. Nobody got up and said, he's lying, it didn't happen that way. The defense, rather, is the mother put pressure on the son to make it up. And I think that's a real tenuous argument to make, Wolf.
Let me let Jeff Toobin weigh in on that point, Jeff.
Well, it's just, I mean, I think Bob is right that, you know, the accuser is the whole case. And, you know, it is a difficult position for Michael Jackson to argue that, you know, well, it is true, as he said on videotape in the Martin Bashir documentary, I sleep in the same bed as this boy, and the boy and he were together in that documentary, but there was no sexual relationship between us. Now, of course, the jury has heard both Michael Jackson's admission that they slept in the same bed and the boy testifying that there was, in fact, sexual contact between them. That's a tough charge to defend against. And if Michael Jackson is convicted, that's the reason he's going to be convicted.
But Jeff, and I want to bring Bob back in a second, but when you say that's the case right there, what about all the other evidence that was brought in that the judge allowed to bring in of earlier accusations against Michael Jackson?
Well, that's why this case will be vigorously argued on appeal if Michael Jackson is convicted, is because what Judge Melville did is he allowed the jury to hear about 5 prior allegations of child molestation that Michael Jackson was never criminally charged with, and 3 of those 5 boys who were allegedly the victims testified that it never happened. But the jury had this evidence put in front of it, and even though the courts have so far always upheld this provision of California law, Section 1108 of the Evidence Code, I think that's going to be a possibly successful grounds for appeal here, because this was so much part of the prosecution's case, not the allegation against this boy, but the allegations against Michael Jackson and other boys.
These are live pictures outside the courthouse in Santa Maria, California. They're awaiting the arrival of Michael Jackson and his party. 4 vehicles driving from the Neverland Ranch. We expect in the next 15 to 30 minutes for that motorcade to make its way to the courthouse in Santa Maria. Michael Jackson will walk inside, as he has so many days over the course of this trial, and he will hear the verdict against or in favor of him, and the ramifications of all of that. Robert Shapiro is helping us better understand this process. What about that point that Jeffrey Toobin just made, Bob, that the earlier accusations were admissible, and this could be an element for a possible appeal if he is convicted?
Well, the first point, Jeffrey, is right on the money, and that is that the prior acts have such a compelling weight with jurors. Wolf gave a lecture to California Judges Association about 6 weeks ago, and there was a poll of judges, and 36 judges had tried cases where prior acts were admitted. Of those 36, 35 resulted in convictions. As far as an appeal, you know, in my mind, the appellate lawyers, which I call the God forbid lawyers, are almost irrelevant in this case. If Michael Jackson is convicted, he's going to be in jail for 6 months to 2 years pending the appeal. And from my perspective, it seems that one day in jail for Michael Jackson will be more than he can manage.
Well, on that point, Bob, since he is a physically sick individual and has been in the hospital on several days over the course of this trial alone, would the system allow some sort of hospitalization in lieu of actual jail time in order to accommodate his health?
No, the judge, once he is remanded, the judge has absolutely no authority over the sheriff's department, who will be in charge of his welfare until the date of sentencing. And at the date of sentencing, if he's sentenced to county jail, it will then go back to the sheriff's department. If he's sentenced to prison, which is the most likely outcome if he is convicted, it will be in the hands of what we call the adult authority, which run the prisons themselves. So they will make all determinations after the judge issues his sentence.
All right, stand by, Bob. I want you to stay with us as we await the verdict of Michael Jackson. We may be as quick as 15 minutes away, maybe 30 minutes away. We're waiting for the motorcade bringing Michael Jackson and his entourage to the Santa Maria courthouse. I want to bring Ted Rowlands and walk us through the process, how we will learn. When I say we, I mean those of us in the news media and the viewers, the listeners watching right now. Ted, how will we get that information as it unfolds?
Well, the judge has allowed for an audio feed of the reading of the verdict. So the court clerk, Lorna Fry, will read count by count, starting with the conspiracy charge and then moving through the molestation charges, the attempted molestation, and the alcohol charges. And we will hear that real time, assuming that the audio feed works. We have contingency plans in case the audio feed does not work for any reason. We have another way to get the information as soon as we can on the air, but we're hoping and we assume that the audio feed will work and everybody will hear it at the same time as it is happening.
So in other words, the judge will convene the session, and then we will be able to hear just the audio of what happens as the foreman is questioned and the judge gets all of the various verdicts. Is that right?
Right. We're not sure when the audio feed will start, whether it will be when the judge walks into court or when the judge asks the four men in this case, if they've reached a verdict. And maybe we'll get to listen in as they transfer the verdict over to the court clerk. But we will be able to hear from the moment that the court clerk starts to read count by count the jury's decisions.
Ted, it's Jeff Toobin here. Can I ask you another sort of technical question that I'm curious about? Is there a plan, if Jackson is convicted, of course, then they will move to the question of bail. Will the microphone still be on while they argue bail, or is the plan only to broadcast the announcement of the verdict itself?
We believe that the plan will be for the verdict and only the verdict. And as soon as the verdict has been read, whether we'll be able to hear the judge thank the jury or maybe hear a little bit of the next phase before it's shut off, we'll have to wait and see. But our understanding is that we will hear the verdict read, and that will be it.
Bob Shapiro, Judge Rodney Melville, who's the presiding judge in this case, has been very strict in moving it along and preventing television cameras from being inside, in contrast to the big case that you handled, the O.J. Simpson case. What kind of grades, what do you sense of how this judge has handled this Michael Jackson case?
Well, I think in the last 10 years, Wolf, judges in California and across the United States have learned a big lesson from what happened in the Simpson case. They are much more circumspect. They are trying as much as they can to keep things outside the media, to keep these cases in the courtroom, and to try to not have the jury influenced in any way, shape, or form. It's exceedingly difficult for a judge, a lawyer, or anybody participating in a case that's on camera to say that they don't change their demeanor, they don't change their actions, they don't change the way they speak. It affects everyone. So even though I am in favor of cameras in the courtroom, I'm in favor of cameras that do not editorialize, that just show what the jury is looking at, and that is the witness on the witness stand.
Would the lawyers have been behaved any differently, significantly differently, do you believe, Bob, had there been television cameras allowed inside?
I wouldn't say significantly different, Wolf, because there does come a point when your job comes before anything. But there are always going to be moments where a lawyer may try to send a message in the event there's a hung jury, may try to do other things that could influence future activities. As far as the questions they're going to ask, no, that wouldn't change at all. But it might change some of the arguments, and it might change some of the positions they say in open court.
Ted Rowlands, how many people have gathered? These are live pictures. We see the attorney, I assume these are live pictures, the attorney going through the metal detectors, Thomas Mesereau, the criminal defense attorney that's been leading the criminal defense. He's already inside. Obviously, he got to the courthouse a lot more quickly, Jeffrey Toobin, than did Michael Jackson, who's still on his way.
And there is Tom Mesereau, as he often did during the trial, waiting to receive the motorcade carrying his client, Michael Jackson. And there was certainly a memorable scene during the day that Michael Jackson was late for court, where all of us saw Mesereau talking urgently into his cell phone, begging Michael Jackson to get to court. That was the day, of course, that he showed up in his blue pajamas. And here, it obviously seems like there is no, he's looking at his watch, but it's not the same kind of crisis in terms of, you know, will the judge be angry? Everybody knows he's on his way, it looks like we're proceeding more or less according to the schedule that the judge set out.
So he's there basically, Jeffrey, to be outside to receive Michael Jackson, to escort him, to walk in with him once he's there.
Absolutely, and it is really a physical connection between defense lawyer and client. You know, at this moment, defense lawyers, you often see, you know, putting their arms around clients. They are, you know, the legal part of their job is done, but it is an emotional and almost physical kind of support that's given now.
Who are the people surrounding him, Ted Rowlands, Thomas Mesereau? Do you know these individuals?
Yes, the woman next to Thomas Mesereau is Susan Yu. She is one of his co-counsels. She did most of the briefing, argued a few things outside the presence of the jury. Behind Mesereau with the glasses underneath the tree is Bob Sanger, and he did a lot of the arguments, most of the technical things. He argued a lot of the motions and handled some of the witnesses, but Thomas Mesereau handled 90% of the important witnesses, if you will, in this case. The other individual is an investigator, a local man that they hired to basically do interviews throughout the trial, and he would come in and out of court every day. You could see the motorcade over on the side of the other screen. They are still on U.S. Highway 101, but they are getting close to Santa Maria. Obviously, they're in cell phone communication with Tom Mesereau and the defense team, and they will be exiting fairly soon here. I can't tell where they are specifically in terms of exits, but they have entered the greater Santa Maria area where you're seeing exit options. Presumably, they are about 5 minutes or less away from entering here. And this is a daily sort of ritual, if you will, where Tom Mesereau either escorts Michael Jackson out after the day or goes and actually meets him as he enters when he gets to the courthouse. A lot more at stake here today. When Michael Jackson leaves these SUVs, there's a chance that he may not be able to get back into his black car and be carried away. He may be in a sheriff's van, depending how things go. That said, if he is found not guilty, one can imagine the type of party atmosphere which will be outside this courthouse. I must say, Wolf, that today or right now it's not just fans. A lot of people from the Santa Maria community are obviously coming to the courthouse here, people who are not holding the Michael Jackson signs, some people that obviously knew that the verdict is coming, and they have made their way here to the courthouse as well.
Bob Shapiro, I assume you know Tom Mesereau, the famed criminal defense community out in California being a relatively small group. Do you know him?
I know him quite well, Wolf.
Talk a little bit about him and how he's done representing this high-profile pop star.
I think he's done an outstanding job. He is very, very accomplished. He's very smart. He is an expert cross-examiner, and Michael Jackson got the best defense that was available. The difficult thing for Tom in this case was that last witness on the videotape and the decision whether or not to have Michael Jackson take the witness stand. Even though that's the client's decision, usually the lawyers have dictate really what's going to happen. And in this case, he was really in a very, very difficult position because I know from previous experience where I have been on the other side suing Michael Jackson, and my partner Skip Miller actually tried a case in the same courthouse against Michael Jackson, that he is a very, very poor witness. And it would seem that if he did take the witness stand, that might just be the end of him on his own testimony. However, there's a big risk in not taking the witness stand. First, Mesereau told the jury they would hear from Michael Jackson. And in a case like this, we're all accustomed now to the television term, he said, or he said, she said. And in this case, it's only he said.
And when he said at the opening statement, Thomas Mesereau, Bob, that the jury would hear from Michael Jackson, the implication was they would hear from him on the stand, but they did hear from him in that video, that documentary that they released, which I suppose he could have been referring to in his opening statement. Is that fair?
I think that would be a nice way to put spin on it, Wolf. But I think when he made his opening statement, he made a commitment to the jury that they would hear Michael Jackson from the witness stand in that courtroom.
What do you think, Jeffrey?
You know, I agree with Bob that was a rare misstep by Tom Mesereau during this trial. I, too, thought Mesereau really did an excellent job. You know, his cross-examinations of the accuser, of the accuser's mother, were really superb. But, you know, there really was no reason to promise that Michael Jackson was going to testify. And the defense, the prosecution, in their summation, made much of Mesereau's failure to deliver some of his promises made in opening statements. But I think Mesereau made the only possible choice he could in keeping Michael Jackson off the witness stand. I just thought he would have been a terrible witness. As Bob points out, he has been a terrible witness in previous civil cases. But also, I mean, this is a guy who has said on camera that he thinks it's appropriate for 40-year-old men to sleep in the same bed with 12-year-old boys. Imagine trying to explain a comment like that to a jury, which is what he would have to do if he took the witness stand. It is simply inexplicable to most people that someone could think that's normal behavior, and for him to have to explain it at length, which he would have had to do, would have sunk his case right there.
There has been some suggestion, Bob Shapiro, that the guidelines, the instructions that the judge gave the jury, nearly 100 pages, were so technical, were so complicated, that it almost made the life of the jury impossible. I don't know if you saw a piece, there was a long piece in the New York Times on this just over this past weekend, and in the end, the jury might have to simply neglect to go into to understand fully all those instructions that the judge gave them. What do you make of that argument?
I think it's correct. The jury instructions in California are legal fictions. For example, the jury is instructed not to consider the fact that the defendant did not take the witness stand in the case. Jurors subconsciously are going to consider it, and in this case, as Jeff correctly pointed out, since it was mentioned in the opening statement, the prosecutors were allowed to tell the jury, well, you were told you were going to hear from Mr. Jackson, and you didn't. So that is going to be a very difficult instruction for the jury to adhere to.
There's another... I'm sorry,
go
ahead,
Bob.
Jeff.
I'm sorry. The second thing that I thought that is going to be very difficult for the jury is on the prior acts. The standard that the jury will consider is more likely than not a civil standard, whereas in the case in chief, it's a criminal standard. And it's very, very difficult to separate those two types of instructions. And the final thing is that I don't know anyone who can really articulate the definition of reasonable doubt.
The argument that some have made, Jeffrey, is that those instructions that the judge gave were more to cover his own record, if you will, if there is an appeal, and it was written in sort of legal jargon as opposed to something that the average layperson sitting on that jury could really understand.
Well, I mean, I think as Bob points out, that's more of a systemic failure in California and in the whole country. I mean, the whole subject of legal instructions is a very vexing one because they are not written in ways that normal people exchange thoughts and just talk. I mean, just to emphasize one thing Bob said, you know, the evidence about the five other allegations against him, part of the jury instructions is don't take that evidence as proof that he did it, but take it as showing whether he had a propensity to do it or not. Those are not normal ways of thinking. I mean, you either allow the evidence and let jurors to draw whatever conclusions they want, or you don't allow the evidence. But the instructions are merely confusing. And I think, you know, one of the values of these high-profile cases is they bring out problems in all cases. And one of the problems that jurors often speak about is that jury instructions are simply very hard to understand. And this case certainly showed why that's true.
We see the motorcade now from this aerial shot stuck in a little traffic as it gets closer and closer to Santa Maria and the courthouse in California. We are presumably only moments away from the motorcade getting there. Michael Jackson walking out, being received by Thomas Mesereau, his attorney, and the other criminal defense attorneys representing Michael Jackson. They'll walk into the courthouse, go through the metal detectors as they have during the 14 weeks of the trial, the testimony, the arguments. Our man on the scene from day one has been Ted Rowlands. He's, of course, there right now. Give us a little flavor. Are people showing up by the carloads, Ted?
Oh, yeah, the crowd has gotten much larger over the past hour, as the judge in this case feared would happen. They wanted to get this verdict read as soon as possible. The motorcade right now is only about a block away. They're going to be making a left-hand turn here and then entering the courthouse area. So we're about a minute away, or less. They're going to turn here and then take a right into the courthouse. And they have 4 SUVs. Presumably a good portion of the Jackson family will be with Michael Jackson as he steps out and walks in to hear his fate. They're now just outside the courthouse, and the first van should be making its way in. You can see the Santa Maria police escort, which has been the case, not just today, but throughout the trial, bringing the Jackson motorcade to and from the courthouse.
We see those SUVs making the way, winding up. They're about to stop, and we see Michael Jackson fans. Are there also Michael Jackson opponents who gather out there as well, or just his fans, Ted?
On any given day, there are some vocal Michael Jackson opponents, but they are outnumbered 99% to 1%. As you see the first SUV pull up here and step out the bodyguards, and here comes Michael Jackson now in one of these cars.
You know what we're going to do, Ted? We're going to just listen a little bit, see if our microphones can pick up any of the sound, any of the exchanges. I don't know if that's possible, but we do see that ubiquitous umbrella going up to help protect Michael Jackson from the sun or presumably other aspects as he walks in. Let's just listen briefly if we could get some of the sound from what may be going on. And there he is, Michael Jackson, being escorted inside, surrounded by his father and other family members. His bodyguards are there as well. Michael Jackson walking in, Thomas Mesereau with the white hair, his criminal defense attorney, his lead attorney, as they go inside. Let's listen a little bit longer.
Stay in the middle. The guy's holding the umbrella over because he's got Barry's
Ted Rowlands, we've seen this happen on so many different occasions during the course of these 14 weeks of this trial. It's a lot different, though, today.
Oh, yeah, and, you know, it may not seem that way. The pictures, they seem the same, but I can tell you at the courthouse, it is night and day. The emotion, just watching him get out. There's Jermaine Jackson, with his hand on the metal detector there next to Thomas Mesro shooting through. You see Janet Jackson and LaToya Jackson going through there as well in front of attorney Bob Sanger. The emotion, just the emotion of seeing him pop out and embrace Susan Yu, his mother, who's been here every day and heard some very graphic testimony. You could tell that there is a lot of emotion here, a lot at stake here. A lot of people didn't think Michael Jackson would show up. People thought that maybe he would flee the country. But here he is. He's here to find out which way this jury is going to decide whether or not he is guilty or innocent. There's Janet Jackson walking through the metal detector. There are a certain amount of seats inside the courtroom. Obviously, they've decided who will get which seats, and they are making their way in slowly but surely.
Bob Shapiro, give us a little flavor of what's going through your mind as you watch all of this. And just to remind our viewers, we're only minutes away from the verdict in the Michael Jackson trial.
Unbelievable anxiety and anticipation at this point in time. When you walk into the courtroom, they'll be looking at all the jurors coming out, seeing if anybody looks towards Michael Jackson, if there's any hint of a smile. They will also be sitting there, and something in California that happens, and in most states, is that the judge will ask the foreman if they've reached a verdict. We know they have reached a verdict. The judge will then ask those verdict forms to be turned over to the bailiff, and the bailiff will give them to the judge. The judge will then review those verdict forms, but will not announce the verdict. Again, people will be looking at the judge for his reactions. Then he will hand it to the court clerk, who will then read the verdict as Michael Jackson stands up. After the reading of the verdict, the lawyers will be asked whether or not they want the jury polled as to whether or not this was their verdict. Generally, if there's a conviction, the defense will ask for a polling. And then comes the moment of truth when the judge makes a decision whether or not to remand Michael Jackson or let him go pending sentencing if, in fact, he is convicted.
And Jeffrey, if in fact he's convicted on some of the so-called lesser charges, he might let him go out on bail.
Absolutely. If he's convicted only of the misdemeanors, for example, I think it is virtually certain that he will be allowed to remain out on bail. You know, one of the folklores of trials is that if the jury comes in and doesn't look at the defendant, that means they are convicting him. If they look at him, that means they are acquitting him. That's actually proven pretty reliable in my experience, and those in the courtroom will let us know whether that plays true to form.
Can the
today.
jurors, Jeffrey, and I'll let Bob weigh in on this as well, if they walk in and let's say they're sympathetic to Michael Jackson, sort of give him a wink and a nod and sort of a smile and say, you know, relax?
Sure, they absolutely can, and it does happen. And even the issue of polling the jury is important. That's not merely a formality, because if in the course of polling a jury, usually the way it works is the judge says, is that your verdict? And each juror says yes. But if a juror says no, I disagree, the judge will send them back in to continue their deliberations. So the polling of the jury usually turns out to be a formality, but it has deep legal significance, and it has happened that it's led to different verdicts.
Bob Shapiro, did you get any hint whatsoever before the verdict in the O.J. Simpson trial from the jurors after they walked in, before the jury verdict was read, what they might decide?
Absolutely not. They came in poker-faced. They knew that every action that they took was going to be reported worldwide. And I think this jury will do the exact same thing. I think they will walk in, they will look straight ahead, they will show no emotion whatsoever, and will act in a real professional way.
And if they do, that would be very much consistent with how they've behaved during this trial. This is a jury that's known that it's been under scrutiny. This jury knows that reporters are sitting there every day. So I think they've gone out of their way, even during very graphic and emotional testimony, not to betray their feelings. And as a result, those of us who watch them have very little idea which way they're leaning.
That's obviously clear right now. We have no idea what the verdict is going to be. And given the nature of the history of California juries, I think it would be ridiculous to even to try to predict what that verdict is going to be. Ted Rowlands, we see all the family members of the Michael Jackson family walking in, the parents, the brothers, the sisters. It would seem to be, at least on the surface, a close-knit, loving family, although we know from all the articles that we've read and all the stories that we've heard, there has been some dysfunctional elements of this family going back many years.
Yeah, but the face that they've put on successfully is that they are one. They have come together to court more times than not. LaToya Jackson went in, one of the first people to go in, and I noticed she was wanded. And that is different. The security today is incredibly high. Each member of the Jackson family, including Michael, was hand-wanded, not just the metal detector. Obviously, a lot of tension, and security is a key aspect of all of this. Right now, there's a very calm sense of quiet outside the courthouse where I could barely hear myself a few minutes ago. Now I can hear a pin drop for a block away. There is nobody talking. Everybody is waiting for this audio feed to kick in, and when that happens, we don't know. The jury obviously has to come in. That'll take a little bit of time, but any minute now, we expect that we'll start to hear that audio feed from inside the courtroom, and from there, we'll be able to see through the audio the picture of what's inside that courtroom. I can only imagine the tension level in there right now.
Ted, are there loudspeakers out there? How are all those hundreds of people going to find out the verdict? Will it just have to be through radios and just the buzz, or will they hear directly themselves?
They will be able to hear some off-air signals from the media, and I think that is why they're literally pressed up against this fence here, which you know very well, Jeffrey, lines the outside of the courthouse. They are all pressed up against it. Whether or not somebody has an amplifier, local TV is covering it, local radio, so I'm sure there are some transistor radios out there or other radios that they'll be able to hear from, so they will hear it. And right now there's a very eerie sense of calm and quiet outside this courthouse. It's hard to articulate, but literally they can hear my voice right now. It is so quiet, people waiting to hear this feed.
Ted, will they give us a sort of a 2-minute warning when the audio feed will begin, or we just have to wait and hope that the system works?
We have to wait and hope it works. In fact, we have Plan B in the works right here. If this audio system doesn't kick in, I'll be getting the verdicts read from a producer here. Peter Ornstein has 2 walkie-talkies up to his ears right now, and that is how we'll get the information out as soon as possible. They're winging it to some extent. As you might imagine, there's a lot of logistics to deal with, so we are just waiting patiently until we, I think, hear this feed. We won't know until it has started.
Is there an accurate number, Ted? How many journalists have gathered in Santa Maria for this Michael Jackson trial? We know not only from the United States and Canada, but from literally around the world, reporters have come to California to cover this trial.
Well, 32 countries are represented. More than 2,000 journalists were credentialed to cover this event. In terms of the size, right now, we see the most we've seen in terms of journalists here, and they are literally from all around the world, and they have been here since this jury got it. They've been here sporadically throughout the trial, but the media is here in force, and the world right now is watching and hopefully listening to this verdict that we expect in any minute.
This is a real
The clerk is now in the court. We understand the clerk is in the court, and 2 minutes, we've been told, till the jury comes in, 2 minutes until the jury comes in, and presumably 2 minutes until this audio feed begins from inside the courtroom.
We'll be listening and we'll be watching. Certainly the anticipation building right now. It doesn't get much more exciting. If you've been watching this case, it's going to boil down in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. What happens, and Jeffrey Toobin, as we await this verdict right now, give us a thought.
Well, just I covered the O.J. Simpson case, and one of the things that I notice is different between the two is, there was greater interest in the United States in the Simpson case, but there really wasn't much international interest in the Simpson case. And what's been so striking about covering Michael Jackson is the degree of worldwide interest. I mean, the CNN camera position there, there have been German television, Japanese television, Mexican television in the next booth over. And, in many respects, Michael Jackson is a greater star overseas than he is in his rather fading way within the United States. So it is no exaggeration to say, the whole world is watching at this point.
We're told the jury is coming in, Ted Rowlands. The members of the jury, 8 women, and 4 men. They've been sitting over these past 14 weeks. Within a minute or so, they should be walking in, and shortly thereafter, we presumably will hear the voice of Judge Rodney Melville give us some of the preparations for the actual reading of these the verdicts, 10 specific counts against Michael Jackson, some more serious clearly than others, but all of them very serious to begin with. Ted, walk us through this process that's about to happen for viewers who are just tuning in right now at the top of the hour. It's 5 p.m. on the East Coast, 2 p.m. on the West Coast.
Well, the judge will walk into the courtroom, all will rise as is typical, and once court is in session, presumably the judge will say, have you reached a verdict? And the answer from the foreperson, number 2, a Hispanic male, will say, yes, we have, Your Honor. At that moment, the verdict forms will be handed over via bailiff to Lorna Fry, and this is the clerk who sits on the left side of the judge. The jury's on the right, and then she will begin with count 1, the conspiracy count, then go through the alleged molestation counts, the lewd acts on a child, the attempted lewd acts, and then the final 4 will be the alcohol counts. Count 2 will be the molestation as alleged by the victim. Whether he's guilty or not guilty on the conspiracy, that will be the big one if he is found guilty on count 2. That will be presumably coming within the next minute. The jury is filing in as we speak, and we are waiting and listening to see if this audio feed kicks in. And if not, we do have someone in a listening room who is hearing it real time and will tell us via the radio what the verdicts are as they come in.
And just to review, Jeffrey Toobin, count 1 is conspiracy to commit child abduction, false imprisonment, and extortion. Once that verdict is reached, as announced on count 1, I presume we will get a pretty good sense which direction this jury is heading.
The big one to listen for is count 2. Count 2 is probably the strongest molestation count, and if he's convicted of that, you know, that changes Michael Jackson's life forever, and that is the count that will keep him in prison for quite a few years.
So we'll be listening to 1 and 2, all of these 10 verdicts, and they will go through, Ted, one by one, all of the verdicts, and then they will poll the jurors after that. Is that how it works?
The attorneys will be given the option, do you want the jurors polled individually? Most likely, whoever loses will say, yes, they do want that to take place, and the jurors will one by one get up and say, yes, indeed, that is how I voted in this process. On the last 4 alcohol charges, they also have a lesser to consider. They could find him not guilty of providing alcohol to molest, but guilty of providing alcohol, which is a misdemeanor charge, meaning Jackson would most likely still be out on bail. Okay. Jury is coming in, I'm being told. The jury is now coming in. The judge wanted the alternates to be here as well, 4 men and 4 women that sat through the trial. The alternates are coming in with the 12 panelists, and presumably now within the minute, we should start to hear this audio feed from inside the courtroom.
Jeffrey, these 8 women and 4 men, the jury and the alternates, there was 1 black alternate, but no blacks on the jury. Did anyone make a big issue out of the fact that there were no blacks on the jury?
Well, Jesse Jackson, who's been a sometime spokesman for Michael Jackson, has raised that issue. Interestingly, you know, if 1 juror had left, the African-American alternate, I believe, was alternate number 1, so he would have joined the jury, but no jurors left, so it is a jury without any African-Americans. In this area, that is not all that unusual. This is less than 2% African-American, this part of Santa Barbara County. This is a city of 70,000 people. Very few African-Americans live there. Many Hispanics live there, but not many African-Americans. So it is not all that out of the ordinary to have a jury without African-Americans.
Is there a heavy police presence, more robust, shall we say, Ted, today than has been the case over these many weeks of this trial?
Wolf, I've just been told the jury is seated, and they are now awaiting for Judge Rodney Melville to enter the courtroom. And at that moment, we should be able to hear this audio feed coming through. The jury, again, is seated, now waiting for the judge to walk into the courtroom to start the proceedings.
All right, we will await, and hopefully that audio signal will work. We'll be able to hear the voice from Judge Rodney Melville give the last bit of instruction as the jury verdict is read to us, to the entire world, all those people who are watching and listening right now. I was asking if the police presence today, Ted, is a lot heavier than it is on a normal day of this trial.
Judge is on the bench. Wolf, the judge is on the bench.
All right.
The judge is on the bench, and we are now waiting for this feed. If it doesn't come through, we have somebody who's monitoring this, and they're telling us via radio the judge is on the bench, and the feed should be coming at any minute. I just heard something in my ear click. I'm assuming that that may be the beginning of this audio feed.
Well, we're letting our viewers know exactly what we know, and hopefully they will get the audio feed exactly as we get it. And we're not getting it yet, so maybe the court has not yet flipped that switch so that we can hear the voice of the judge. Ted, tell us what your producers on the scene are telling you.
They are telling us that the judge is on the bench. He's got a radio, and the verdict has now been handed to the judge. The judge will look over the verdict forms and make sure that everything is in order, and then the judge will hand the verdict forms to his left so that they can be read by the court clerk, Lorna Fry, who sits directly to the judge's left. As you're looking, facing him from the courtroom. We have been told that the judge has the verdicts in hand and is looking them over right now, but obviously we are not hearing the audio feed coming from inside the courtroom. However, we will get the verdicts as they are read via two-way radio, and I will pass along the verdicts one by one with each count as we get them over the radio.
All right, we're going to stand by, and hopefully within the next few seconds we'll begin to hear the voice of the clerk and or the judge as the verdicts in the Michael Jackson trial are read inside this courthouse in Santa Maria, California. These are crowds that have gathered outside the courthouse getting ready. They're anxious to hear as well whether or not Michael Jackson will be convicted or acquitted in this child molestation trial. It's been 14 weeks in the making. The jury has met for 7 days, 32 hours if you're counting, of actual deliberation before reaching the verdict. About 95 or so minutes ago, when we received word from the court that the jury has reached a verdict and would be announced within 60 minutes, but it's actually taken a little bit more than an hour and a half. Given the long ride from Neverland to the courthouse, it took a little bit longer than presumably the judge had wanted, but all is well that ends well in this particular regard, not necessarily, Jeffrey Toobin, a big deal that it's 30 minutes later than the judge may have wanted.
This has actually worked fairly smoothly in terms of getting them there, but so far the audio system at least either hasn't been turned on or it's not working.
Any new word you're getting yet on what's going on, Ted?
No, Wolf, I'm looking at Peter Ornstein, our producer. He has both radios pressed up against his ear, waiting for an update. There are 10 separate counts, so there are a lot of forms that the judge will have to look through before he hands them over to the clerk. Presumably, the judge is still checking those out. Again, I just heard an attempt, it sounded like, for the audio feed to kick in. However, nothing at this point. We're still waiting word. What's that? Judge is still reading the verdicts. I'm being told the judge is still reading over the verdict forms, and the courtroom, I'm being told, is absolutely silent, which pretty much mirrors what's happening outside the courthouse. It is absolutely silent out here as everybody waits for word to see which way this jury has decided in terms of Michael Jackson's fate. The judge will, when he's finished looking at these verdicts, hand them to the clerk, and at that point we'll either get the feed or we will pass it along to you via the radio real time. We have somebody who has a visual and has audio from a feed room, which is around the backside of the courthouse, and that individual will pass it along to us over the radio if need be.
How extraordinary, Jeffrey, is the way this Judge Rodney Melville, has orchestrated the release of the information and the verdict. How unusual is this, what we're seeing? Obviously, this is a high-profile celebrity case, but still.
I've never seen a judge allow a partial audio broadcast. I mean, this is without precedent. It was designed to avoid the confusion that we had in the Martha Stewart case, where there was no audio feed, and people came running out of the courtroom with signals that some were right, some were wrong. The idea is give everyone the information at the same time, avoid that confusion, and we'll see if it works.
Bob Shapiro, if you're still awaiting, still can hear us, Bob Shapiro, the criminal defense attorney who represented O.J. Simpson in his trial 10 years ago, how extraordinary is this procedure that Judge Melville has worked out?
It's totally unique, and as Jeff pointed out, in these high-profile cases, one thing you always hear, and that is from the prosecutors, that the cases aren't going to be tried any differently, and the judges would like you to have that same impression. Nothing could be further from the truth. These cases have their own unique attributes. Everybody views them differently, and I think the judge has made a good decision here in releasing the verdicts. I actually would have preferred to have those verdicts read with a camera in the courtroom on the clerk.
We can assume, Bob Shapiro, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no hung jury. They've reached a verdict on all 10 counts.
It's not we can assume, we know. They have announced that they have reached a verdict. They buzzed the judge, and they have one buzz if they have a verdict, two buzzes if they have a question. So clearly, if the reports have been accurate, there was one buzz and a verdict will be read on each and every count.
One thing that was very unusual about this jury deliberation is that the questions that the jury had, and there were some questions, and the readbacks that took place were not released to the public. And I think, frankly, that's a very disturbing development for those of us who believe in public trials. And this is the first trial I have ever heard of where jury questions were not released to the public.
Would they be released after the verdicts are announced?
Perhaps, presumably, but since they've never not been released before, I don't know what procedure the judge plans to use. But, I mean, again, I think it's an example of how these high-profile trials develop their own codes, their own laws, and judges have been moving more and more towards restricting them.
You've tried a lot of cases in California. How extraordinary is this, the fact that we were not told what the questions were, Bob Shapiro?
Yeah, it's not, I don't find it that extraordinary at all. Generally, what happens is when the jury has a question, the judge calls both lawyers in, and they read the question. And it may be, can you give us a better definition? Usually the response is, follow the instructions that you've already been given. It's a time for people to try to be fair, but it is also a give and take session. And so those kinds of things generally are off the record. I don't see any problem with it. If there is a read back, they could announce what was read back, and I agree with Jeff on that issue.
And Bob Shapiro, we're told by Ted Rollins and our producers on the ground who are inside that courtroom listening to what's going on as we await the audio from the court clerk and from the judge on the verdict, 10 counts involving this child molestation trial against Michael Jackson. As the judge is now going through the paperwork, reading the verdict, studying them, does he have any discretion if, let's say, he has a question and he's confused? Could he tell the jury, you know what, I want to take a break and let's review something, or must he go forward now, Bob Shapiro, and have the verdicts announced?
Well, if that's a very, very good question. If there are inaccuracies, or if there are clear mistakes in the verdict form, or if there are special allegations that the jurors have to render a decision on and they haven't filled out the verdict forms properly, he will instruct the jury to go back and do them properly. However, he cannot change anything that this jury has done at this point in time. If there is a conviction, he could do it later.
Another unusual aspect of this deliberation is that the judge has not released the exact verdict form that the jury is filling out. Again, that's usually the case in high-profile trials where there's interest in a verdict form. For reasons that are, frankly, inexplicable to me, this judge has not released the precise form that the jury will be checking the boxes in, so we don't know precisely how the verdict will be announced.
Bob Shapiro, here we go. Here's the audio. Let's listen.
Superior Court of the State of California for the County of Santa Barbara, Santa Maria Division. The people of the State of California, plaintiff versus Michael Joe Jackson, defendant. Case number 1133603. Count 1, verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant not guilty of conspiracy as charged in count 1 of the indictment, dated June 13th, 2005, foreperson number 80. Count 2, verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant not guilty of a lewd act upon a minor child as charged in count 2 of the indictment, dated June 13th, 2005, foreperson number 80. Count 3, verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant not guilty of a lewd act upon a minor child as charged in count 3 of the indictment, dated June 13th, 2005, foreperson number 80. Count 4, verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant not guilty of lewd act upon a minor child as charged in count 4 of the indictment, dated June 10th, 2005, foreperson number 80. Count 5, verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant not guilty of a lewd act upon a minor child as charged in count 5 of the indictment, dated June 10th, 2005, foreperson number 80. Count 6, verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant not guilty of attempting to commit a lewd act upon a minor child as charged in count 6 of the indictment, dated June 13th, 2005, foreperson number 80. Count 7, verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant not guilty of administering an intoxicating agent to assist in the commission of a felony as charged in count 7 of the indictment, dated June 13th, 2005, foreperson number 80. Count 7, verdict, lesser offense. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant not guilty of providing alcoholic beverages to persons under the age of 21, a lesser included offense of that charge in count 7 of the indictment, dated June 13th, 2005, foreperson number 80. Count 8, verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant not guilty of administering an intoxicating agent to assist in the commission of a felony as charged in count 8 of the indictment, dated June 13, 2005, foreperson number 80. Count 8, verdict, lesser offense. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant not guilty of providing alcoholic beverages to persons under the age of 21, a lesser included offense that charged in count 8 of the indictment, dated June 13, 2005, foreperson number 80. Count 9, verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant not guilty of administering an intoxicating agent to assist in the commission of a felony as charged in count 9 of the indictment, dated June 10, 2005, foreperson number 80. Count 9, verdict, lesser offense. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant not guilty of providing alcoholic beverages to persons under the age of 21, a lesser included offense of that charge in count 9 of the indictment, dated June 10, 2005, foreperson number 80. Count 10, verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant not guilty of administering an intoxicating agent to assist in the commission of a felony as charged in count 10 of the indictment, dated June 10, 2005, foreperson number 80. Count 10, verdict, lesser offense. We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant not guilty of providing alcoholic beverages to persons under the age of 21, a lesser included offense of that charge in count 10 of the indictment, dated June 10, 2005, foreperson number 80.
That completes the reading of the verdict, and now we're going to go off the air.
And there it is, all 10 counts, not guilty on all 10 counts. Michael Jackson will be walking out of this courtroom a free man, not guilty on the more serious charges, the lesser charges, administering alcohol, a misdemeanor, a slam dunk against the prosecution. Jeffrey Toobin I think it's fair to say a lot of people are going to be very, very surprised.
A lot of people are going to be surprised, and you don't need a law degree to understand this verdict. It is an absolute and complete victory for Michael Jackson, utter humiliation and defeat for Thomas Snedden, the district attorney, who has been pursuing Michael Jackson for more than a decade, who brought a case that was not, it was not one that this jury bought at all. And this one's over.
We said before the verdict that California juries are unpredictable, Bob Shapiro. In this particular case, a lot of people thought Michael Jackson would be convicted at least on the misdemeanors. A lot of people thought he'd be convicted on the more serious felony counts, the sexual assault, if you will. Give us your immediate reaction.
Well, first, the jury did not come up with a compromise verdict, which a lot of people would suspect if they just wanted to give the prosecution something. The jury clearly has told the prosecution this was a case you probably should not have brought. The little boy's credibility was probably non-existent to this jury, coupled with the mother who offered testimony that bordered on the bizarre, that this is a case that they didn't want to show guilt by association. They did follow the judge's instructions clearly on the prior bad acts by not using that as a way to show he committed this particular crime. And my hope is that the public accepts this verdict. This is a jury in a very, very conservative part of California, a jury that by all markings look like a pro-prosecution jury. And if this jury had no doubt, none of us should have any doubt whatsoever.
You personally, though, are pretty surprised, Bob Shapiro. You thought this was perhaps going to go the other way.
I certainly did. And I didn't think Michael would be singing Beat It. Now he's going to be doing the moonwalk.
He's not only going to be doing the moonwalk, he's going to be coming out. He might jump on top. All of a sudden, his health, I suspect, Jeffrey Toobin, is going to get a lot better very, very quickly. Ted Rowlands, let's bring you in. You've been covering this trial from day one. We see a lot of people cheering, a lot of happy Jackson fans out there. Set the scene for us.
Well, when the first verdict was read, they cheered, then immediately they quieted down to hear the next, and it went through all 10. Clearly now it's pandemonium out here among the crowd members. They are jubilant. Inside the courtroom, we understand from our producer, Michael Jackson dabbed his eyes with Kleenex during the reading of the verdict, and now you can see the SUVs are pulling up, and Michael Jackson will be getting inside one of those vehicles and heading to wherever he wants. He is not guilty and has to answer to nobody. He has been found unanimously not guilty by this jury, and this crowd that is gathered outside could not be more pleased. 90% of them Jackson supporters.
Are there arrangements? Is there a microphone set up outside the courthouse there where you are, Ted Rowlands, for if Michael Jackson wants to make a statement to his fans, if his attorneys want to speak, if the prosecution wants to speak, or if the jury wants to speak? We're standing by for all of that if it happens. What's the arrangement that's been worked out?
We have been given permission from the court to set up interview rooms inside the courthouse for defense lawyers, prosecutors, Michael Jackson, and jury members. It will be up to those individuals whether or not they want to make a statement. We were told that Michael Jackson would be at least reading a statement. We have to wait to see whether or not that comes to fruition. The vans are out here. He could leave at any minute. We will not be able to stick a microphone out to get any audio from Jackson, impromptu audio, as he's leaving, because sheriff deputies have lined the space between the media and the vans. We will not most definitely be able to get to Michael Jackson. Security is extremely high here, but we do expect a statement from Michael Jackson in this prearranged scenario. Whether or not he's up to it or wants to do it at this time, we'll have to wait here and see, but everything is in place for all of the parties to make statements now here in the next few minutes.
What are you hearing from our producers inside, Ted Rowlands? What's happening right now? And just to recap, for viewers who may just be tuning in, not guilty, all 10 counts against Michael Jackson. A clear and decisive unanimous win for Michael Jackson against these charges. What's happening inside the courtroom right now?
What we've been told as far as inside the courtroom is only that Michael Jackson dabbed his eyes. We have not gotten another update since then. The judge is now addressing the jurors, thanking them for their service. He has not adjourned court yet, so all of the parties are still inside court listening to Judge Rodney Melville basically button up this case, thank jurors for their service, and then allow everybody to go their separate ways. So right now the judge still holding court, saying goodbye to all of the parties inside the courtroom.
All right, Ted, I'm going to ask you to get some more information, what's happening inside. Let me bring Jeffrey Toobin, our senior legal analyst, back into this. This is clearly everything that Michael Jackson, Thomas Mesereau's attorney, all of the family members, the fans, wanted plus.
Absolutely. And you know, I think a lot of people watching this verdict, especially people who didn't follow the trial very closely, will be tempted to say, look, another crazy California jury acquitting an obviously guilty person. Many people regard that as happening in O.J. Simpson, Robert Blake last year. Whatever you think of those other verdicts, this was a very different case. This was a questionable case. This was a difficult case for the prosecution. I think one issue that the prosecution will really have difficulty answering is why did they bring that count one? Because the count one was a very weak count in and of itself, but it also allowed the defense to put forth the conspiracy theory that the jury obviously believed, that this case was orchestrated by the accuser's mother, that the mother put the son up to lying about what happened. If these prosecutors had not charged that conspiracy, the mother wouldn't even have been a witness in this case, and it would have just been the accuser testifying, and I think the prosecutors would have had a lot better chance of winning.
What happens now, Bob Shapiro? Does Michael Jackson and his attorneys, can they take legal action against the accuser, the accuser's mother, the accuser's supporters right now for if they decide they want to keep this issue going?
No, they are finished. They are not going to bring any further action whatsoever. They want this thing to go away, to fade away, and not be heard from again. I wanted to just touch on one thing that Jeffrey so accurately pointed out, and that is by bringing up count one as the most serious charge being the first count and allowing...
Now, let me just repeat what that count was. Conspiracy to commit child abduction, false imprisonment, and extortion, as we see people leaving the courtroom where the judge has now dismissed the jury. Go ahead, Bob.
The jury clearly would find that that was overreaching. This case never was about extortion. This case was about one issue and one issue only, and that is, was this little boy molested or not molested by Michael Jackson? The jury has spoken loud and clear. And it goes back to one thing that I have said in these cases over and over again, that defense lawyers don't win these cases, prosecutors lose them.
And when you say prosecutors lose them, give us a specific, what did the prosecutor do wrong in this particular case? Here he is, Michael Jackson. Here he is, Michael Jackson is walking out of the courtroom right now. We see him, there's a little bit of a smile there. I suppose he's as stunned as a lot of other people are, surrounded by his father and his sister and other family members walking out. No visible emotion there, Jeffrey. Did you see some visible emotion on his face?
Not at that moment. He did look stunned and exhausted, and much like he has throughout the trial, just drained and physically ill.
And we see his attorney, criminal defense attorney, the white-haired man, Thomas Mesereau, walking out. There's the family. Let's listen in to see if we can hear anything.
Mr. Mesereau.
inside his SUV now, his supporters, his family members hugging each other. Michael Jackson blew a kiss or two to his fans. He could hear the cheering as he was walking out. Thomas Mesereau, his attorney, staying behind together with his legal team. Michael Jackson not guilty, all 10 counts that were brought against him. He clearly didn't make a statement on this particular occasion. Perhaps he'll be making a statement once he returns to his Neverland Ranch, another 45-minute or so drive from here. We'll be standing by to hear if Thomas Mesereau, his attorney, will be making a statement, and if the prosecution will be making a statement. Ted Rowlands, you're there. Give us a little bit more.
Well, Wolf, Rusty Dornan, my colleague, was inside the courtroom when these verdicts were read outside. The vans are now leaving. The fans chasing the caravan down the street. Take us through what happened, Rusty.
Absolutely incredible, as it always is, as you know, in those courtrooms. You could not hear a sound in the courtroom as the judge was ripping open each of the verdict messages, because he had to look at them first before he had the clerk read them. And the only sound in the courtroom you could hear was the tearing of these envelopes. Meantime, I was sitting just behind the family, behind Catherine and Joe Jackson and Tito, and then in front of them, LaToya, his sister, and Randy, his brother. Now, just as the clerk is about to read the verdicts, all the kids reached around. Tito had his arm around his mother. LaToya reached her hand around. They all were touching Catherine Jackson, Michael's mother. She started to break. As soon as they heard the first not guilty, she broke down and started to cry. They all kept sort of grabbing her and holding her. And from that point on, really, there was no other sound in the courtroom other than that clerk reading those not guilty verdicts. Now, Michael Jackson, you could not see his expression. He appeared very somber, but at the end, he did turn. He hugged his attorney, Robert Sanger, then, of course, also hugged Thomas Mesereau, but it still appeared very somber. As you can see, when he was leaving, he was blowing kisses to the fans and that sort of thing. But absolutely incredible moment in the courtroom, and of course for his family, and for him, for what they've been going through for the past few months.
Walking out, the family did not, by any stretch of the imagination, raise their hands
No.
up. There wasn't a sense of jubilation. Was there any of that, any celebration in
There
court?
was no celebration. And of course, the judge cautioned everyone in the beginning, because the public is in the courtroom as well, do not show any signs of either unhappiness or jubilation with those verdicts. And as they were read, the family, as I said, all they did was they really showed how they felt by touching each other. And and although Michael's father, Joe Jackson, kept his hands clasped and stared straight forward through the whole time the verdicts were being read. As we walked outside of the courtroom, then the other brothers and sisters were there. Jermaine was there, as well as Janet Jackson, were there to greet the family as soon as they came out of the courtroom.
What about the jurors? Did they make eye contact with Jackson walking in, or did you see anything from them?
You couldn't. Jackson was looking directly at the jurors as they walked in. He seemed to be nodding somewhat, thanking them as they left, but the jurors seemed more conscious of acknowledging the alternates that were also there. All the alternates, all 8 alternates, were also in the courtroom at the time. But Jackson, as I said, very somber, as he has been through much of this trial. It's been very difficult to read his emotions, but certainly after he hugged his attorneys, you could see there was definitely some relief on his part.
What about Tom Sneddon, who had so much invested in this case, the man that decided to go forward despite the inadequacies, if you will, with the accuser and the accuser's family? Anything from him?
Nothing. It was when the prosecutors came in, they seemed very upbeat. When they initially came in, they were talking, back for a lot of smiling, that sort of thing, which contrasted really with when Tom Mesereau walked in with Michael Jackson. The two of them sat there in the courtroom staring straight ahead for maybe 10, 15 minutes before the judge and the jury came in, whereas the prosecutors had been talking with one another and smiling, that sort of thing. After the verdict was announced, just very grim face. They weren't looking at each other, just very grim face after hearing, because once you heard those first 2 counts, it was very clear where this jury was going.
It's incredible. All right, Rusty Dornan inside the courtroom. Wolf?
All right, I just want to bring Rusty back. If Rusty can hear me, can she hear me, Ted?
Yeah, she can hear you.
Rusty, tell our viewers once again, and you were sitting inside the courtroom, the immediate reaction from Michael Jackson once that first count was read and the verdict was not guilty. You just recap briefly what you saw.
You cannot see. He keeps his face very straight towards the front of the room. He does not look from side to side. He did not appear to look at the jury after that first count was read, because the clerk who was reading them was on the other side of the courtroom. So you did not see him move. He appeared to be very somber. But the family, as I said, who was sitting directly in front of me, the relief on their part was immediately apparent. They were holding their mother, Catherine. They were touching her. Just an immediate sort of sigh of relief within the shoulders. They were the ones that you could really see some kind of reaction. But as far as Jackson was concerned, you could not see even any kind of sigh or anything like that. He just appeared straightforward the entire time all of the verdicts were being read. Wolf?
Well, and there was no audible, there's no noise, no cheering, no thank gods, no nothing like that. Everybody was totally silent as all 10 counts were read.
That's correct, because the judge had made such a strict admonishment that if any signs of jubilation were shown, that he would throw those people out of the courtroom. So everyone was very conscious of how they should behave in court, and there was really no audible or reaction within the courtroom when he began reading those counts, or the clerk when she began reading the counts.
And what about when the whole thing was over and the judge dismissed the jury? Were there cheers from the Jackson team and from Michael Jackson himself?
No, still no cheers. The first person he turned to was Robert Sanger to the left and gave him a very, very sort of mild hug. He then turned to Thomas Mesereau, who was on his right, also gave him a hug. The family stood up. They sort of all touched each other once again, and then they demanded, the court demanded that the media leave the courtroom. So at that point, I could not see the family actually interact with Michael Jackson when he was coming out of that courtroom area.
We just saw Thomas Mesereau, Rusty, and Ted get into a vehicle. Do we have any idea where he's going, what he's about to do? Because I anticipated he might be getting ready to make a statement to the press.
Yeah, we definitely anticipated something from the defense, especially if they came out victorious. They've been very tight-lipped throughout this, and we did expect that they would do something, make some sort of statement. Whether that comes now in the next day or next few hours, I'm sure they're celebrating.
But it's difficult, as you know, because Michael Jackson's representative, who was speaking to the press, is no longer working for Michael Jackson. So we're kind of unsure of how we're going to be receiving word of this, right, Ted? I mean, whether it's going to come through the defense team or...
Right. Thomas Mesereau is a reserved man who is very skeptical of the media, and it seems as though the Jackson family, Mesereau, the defense team, is acting as though they have been vindicated, yes, but not pleased that this ever happened in the first place. And that's really been, at least Mesereau's attitude throughout this entire trial: come in, work hard, and almost in a way that he seemed upset that he had to be there.
It was interesting, too, that Joe Jackson, Michael's father, when he came in, he walked very slowly into the courtroom, and he looked at each and every member of the press that was sitting in all the outside, sort of trying to get to people's faces and think, you know, if I'm going to remember you. That was sort of the feeling you got, because he was so studied as he did it and walked so slowly and looked at each person in each row thinking, you know, and it was the feeling of, I'm going to remember you no matter what happens in this case.
And you see the motorcade, Ted, hold on one second, Ted. The motorcade, this vehicle, this black vehicle, is heading back, we assume, to the Neverland Ranch, carrying Michael Jackson, a very elated Michael Jackson, not guilty on all 10 counts, read by the clerk just a little while ago. Very, very emotional moment for him, for his family, for all of his fans who were watching this jury and the deliberation. Ted Rowlands, and let me bring Rusty back for a moment. When the jury walked in, all 12 members, 8 women, 4 men, Rusty, did they make eye contact based on what you could tell with Michael Jackson going in to the announcement of the verdicts?
They seemed to, when they came in, they seemed to just take their seats. And as I said, they made eye contact with the alternates who were in the front row, because I saw one of the jurors wave at one of the alternates, and I saw one of the alternates who were sitting in the front row also wave at one of the jurors. Now, while the verdicts were being read, they did not look at Michael Jackson. They appeared to be looking right at the court clerk as she was reading. They did not appear to be looking at her. And I don't know if you heard, actually, the statement that apparently the jury made. I'm not sure if that came out.
No, we have not heard that. We have not heard that. But why don't you tell us? The only thing we heard, Rusty, and I want to make sure you know, the only thing we heard were the verdicts on the 10 counts read by the clerk. We didn't hear anything else.
Right. Well, they just talked about that they believe that this, hang on one second, I'm going to put my glasses on to read some of this, that They believed that it was up, that the testament to the belief in the justice system and the truth. And they, this is not all verbatim, I'm taking this very quickly, but they also requested to return to their lives. They came out of their lives anonymously. They requested that they return to their lives anonymously. But they did want the judge to read this, that they felt that this entire procedure was a testament to their belief in the justice system and the truth. Now, the judge did go on to say that they were allowed to talk to anyone they wanted to, and that he actually urged them to talk, that he thought it was a good idea.
Right now it is.
Also, perhaps the defense or
from Nancy Baker and Larry King.
Encourage them to talk to them, and of course, and talk to the media as well.
Wolf, we just...
yeah, go ahead, Ted.
We just received a statement from Debbie Rowe, the mother of two of Michael Jackson's children, who was brought here and testified for the prosecution in this case. And many believe that that was one of the moments where the prosecution really, they seemed to be stunned by what Debbie Rowe had to say, because although she was a prosecution witness, she got up there and basically said that Michael Jackson was a wonderful father. Debbie Rowe is saying, quote, Debbie is overjoyed that the justice system really works, regardless of which side called her to testify at the trial. That from Iris Finsilver, Debbie Rowe's attorney. One of the moments in this trial, Debbie Rowe's testimony, where people were literally scratching their heads saying, why was this witness called for the prosecution? Whether Debbie Rowe laid in wait and was a torpedo of sorts, doing it on purpose, or if it was she was not vetted out, we'll never know. But obviously she's weighing in now that she believes justice has been done.
Also, Wolf, I just did want to add that I had...
Our viewers, Rusty, just to remind our viewers, because I know you were there together with Ted for virtually every step of the way, Debbie Rowe was called the ex-wife of Michael Jackson, the mother of two of his children. Debbie Rowe was called to testify on behalf of the prosecution, but what she said, widely interpreted as helping Michael Jackson, the defense, given the loving nature of what she had to say about Michael Jackson.
And keep in mind, Wolf, that if Michael Jackson would have been found guilty, Debbie Rowe would have taken custody of the children, and she is currently in a custody fight with Michael Jackson for those children. So people were blown away by her testimony. It was so supportive of Jackson on the stand, and now, with the verdict in, again, she is showing her support, saying she's overjoyed.
Yeah, Wolf, I just wanted to add one thing that I didn't tell you about the jury statement, which was interesting, too, is they also said that we, the jury, have had the weight of the world on our shoulders, while we were making this decision, but we did it studiously and meticulously, that they studied the evidence, that they didn't want anyone to think that this was just some slam-bam thing, that they went through, they feel, every piece of evidence and really looked at it before they made that decision. So that was part of their statement that they released as well.
So, Rusty, based on the statement that was read on behalf of the 12 members of the jury, did you get the sense they would be making individual statements, speaking to the news media, or that was it?
Well, what happened is the judge told them that the representative for the media, Peter Chaplin, who's been the pool producer here, was going to go back with them and talk to them for about 2 minutes to tell them what to expect, which Peter Chaplin also did in the Peterson trial, just talk to the jurors, say, look, they don't bite. They just want to ask you a few questions. If you want to do it, we're happy to have you stay. If you don't want to do it, there's a place to go and you don't have to, and you can go home. So that's what he was doing right now. We'll have to see who actually shows up in that jury room for this jury press conference. We'll have to see who really does want to talk.
Our cameras, Rusty, did catch, and Ted, I want you to weigh on this as well. Thomas Sneddon, the prosecutor, he was one of the first to get out of that courtroom after the verdicts were read. Here's a picture of him sort of bolting. There he is right there in the middle of the screen. He was basically one of the first to get out of there. This is not a good day, Ted, for him.
No, you can really see the grim faces, can't you, on the prosecution team?
Yeah, and all the way until this point here, that was all prosecution representatives. In fact, you still had one more coming out there. A lot of members of the prosecution team in court today, and they have been throughout, and they have put their heart and soul into this. They truly believe, they have a case, and they truly believe that the individual that they were going after, Michael Jackson, was indeed worthy of their attention and their hard work. They did work hard in their case, but I think clearly, for those of us who have been in this courtroom day after day after day, it makes sense. This verdict does when you analyze the victim's family. The J.C. Penney case, I think, is all you have to say, because what was proven in this case as fact by Thomas Mesereau is that this family had inconsistencies before in a very similar attitude, and I'm sure when we hear from jurors that will be a big factor.
I think there was the credibility issue, and when they went back to that jury room, reasonable doubt was just enough to sway them. But I mean, again, the prosecutors were incredible. I mean, their questioning was so dramatic at times. Yes.
I'm going to interrupt. Reverend Jesse Jackson's on the phone. He's been ministering to Michael Jackson. He's become a unofficial spokesman, I think we can say, for Michael Jackson. Give us your reaction, Reverend Jackson.
Well, it was a painful process and stressful at the very end. Michael called me this morning, and we talked and prayed as we often do, and he will call back again later this afternoon. But this has been an excruciating process. The time the sheriff went into his home, in some sense invaded, occupied, and confiscated materials that ended up in the newsroom and in the courtroom. And kind of two trials at the same time, a courtroom trial and a newsroom trial, and he was tried and convicted in many newsrooms or many TV shows. And since it's not a sequestered jury, one did not know its impact upon the jury. The jury had the capacity in the end to discern innuendo and suggestion from fact. The accusers made some very, very strong charges, but each time on the cross-examination, they wilted. There's always a sense of some underscore which weakened their credibility. The jury has spoken, and I hope that many lessons will be learned from this. The healing process must begin. Michael must assess the impact of the very impropriety of these problems that got him in this trouble. And we hope that all those involved now will learn a lesson, that we will go to another stage.
Were you expecting this not guilty verdict, Reverend Jackson, or were you bracing for guilty?
I was bracing for either, in the sense that if the trial used the standard of reasonable doubt, he would be acquitted. But then oftentimes jurors use political standards, not reasonable doubt standards, and there was a highly charged political environment in which all of this took place. I mean, the sheriff was unrelenting. He was not on the gag order. The DA was unrelenting. The judge gave them generous latitude to make their case over and over again. There were no African Americans on the jury.
Reverend Jack.
Hold on one second. I think we're breaking up. Reverend Jackson, I think our line may be breaking up. I don't know if you want to repeat that last thought, if you can still hear me. I think we've just lost Reverend Jackson. We're gonna try to reconnect with Reverend Jackson. Jesse Jackson on the phone with us has spent a lot of time in recent weeks with Michael Jackson, serving as an unofficial spokesman, ministering to him as well in these very, very difficult days, weeks leading up to this not guilty verdict on all 10 counts. I think the Reverend Al Sharpton is with us as well on the phone. Reverend Sharpton, are you there?
I'm here.
All right.
I'm in your studio.
You're in our studios in New York. Reverend Sharpton, give us your reaction.
Well, I think, in 2002 when Michael Jackson came to New York and we hosted him, we were castigated when he started saying that he felt they were coming after him because he raised questions about his owning the Beatles catalog and others. I think that this is a vindication for people that believe that people are innocent until proven guilty. And I think that there are no winners here. I don't think there's no reason for Michael or those opposing Michael to gloat. There's a lot of pain, a lot of hurt here. Children have been dragged into court. Michael's reputation has been damaged severely. But I think the criminal justice system worked this time. I think we can say that this jury, despite being inundated by media, despite the fact they were not sequestered, despite the fact there were questionable rulings by the judge, this jury said the evidence wasn't there and they acquitted him. I think this is good for America. And I don't think any of us that went on the line saying that Michael deserved the same right as any citizen are celebrating tonight anything other than the fact that people should have the right to be proven guilty of a crime, even if we disagree with their lifestyle.
Reverend
and that's what
Sharpton,
happened today.
were you among those African-American leaders in this country who expressed concern that were no African-American members on the jury?
Yes, I did. I expressed that concern, and I've expressed concern of what was behind this. A lot of people in the music industry that claimed that for years there were things going on. They never said that, while Michael was not talking back or not raising questions as he did when he came to our headquarters in Harlem. And I felt that he was being vilified and in many ways lynched by the media. I think today showed that there can be a speck of grass grow even through concrete, and that people are going to be balanced and fair if given the opportunity. I think that they showed tremendous courage. Those 12 jurors who may go into a community that disagrees with them, some of them vehemently, but they upheld the best in the American jurisprudence system by saying if the evidence wasn't there, despite whatever biases I may or may not have, I'm not going to use the system to make a statement. I'm going to use the system to convict people if they're guilty of a crime.
Jeffrey Toobin is here with me. Reverend Sharpton, our senior legal analyst, has a question for you.
Reverend Sharpton, do you think, and Michael Jackson has said that he thinks it's appropriate for him to sleep in the same bed as boys who are 12, 13 years old. Do you think he ought to stop doing that?
I think that Michael now can have time to reflect and think a lot of deliberate moves as he goes forward. The question is, Jeffrey, that whether or not it was a crime for him to say that. Whatever my feelings, I talked to Michael. I've been to Neverland, and I've had advice for Michael pro and con. The issue here was not my advice as a minister or even as a man. The issue here was whether he committed a crime. That should be proven. Otherwise, it would set a precedent that anyone could make an accusation against any public figure, and we'd be thrown into jail or convicted just based on media hysteria rather than hard evidence. That's what was frightening to me about the condition of this trial.
I want you to stand by, Reverend Sharpton. Stephen Clark is with us from Mountain View, California, a former prosecutor, now a criminal defense attorney. He's been inside that courtroom. He's been watching this case. Stephen Clark, give us your reaction. How surprised, if you were surprised, were you?
Well, actually, I wasn't surprised on many of the counts being not guilty. Frankly, after watching the prosecution's case in court, there left a lot to be desired, and there clearly was reasonable doubt. I thought that the jury may hang on two of the more serious child molest counts that the young boy described. And the reason I say that is because the prior act's evidence was quite compelling as to two of the young boys, and I thought that the jury, that some members of that jury may say, look, Michael Jackson's a pedophile, and I'm going to give the prosecution a chance to get this right next time. But frankly, the conspiracy count was an anchor around the prosecution's case. They made a serious strategic mistake bringing it in the first place, and I think that's really what happened here. The jury just said, look, I'm not going to give the mother and the accuser the keys to Michael Jackson's bank account in this situation. They were disliked. So I think that conspiracy count was a big mistake. And I'm frankly a little surprised that there weren't some jurors that felt that he did molest the young boy, but I'm not surprised on the other counts being not guilty.
Stephen Clark, the bottom line, though, and I think you can boil it down to this, is that jury simply did not believe the accuser, who was 13 years old and is now 16 years old. They simply didn't believe this young man.
Well, there was certainly enough doubt as to his testimony. They may believe him, and I'm not sure that when they do finally speak, they're going to say, we think Michael Jackson is without fault in this situation. I think that clearly they would say he's got a lot of personal problems. He shouldn't be sleeping in bed. Maybe he did this, but frankly, on the basis of this boy's testimony, when you look at the reasonable doubt standard, before you put somebody in jail, that's the standard you have. I think they just said, look, we cannot believe him beyond a reasonable doubt. When you look at the other evidence that called into question his credibility, and particularly the influence that the mother apparently had on him over prior occasions in that JCPenney case. So they may have believed him in the sense of sitting around and discussing it at a cocktail party, but when you look at that reasonable doubt standard, they had to go in favor of the defense unless they were convinced beyond a reasonable doubt.
I'm going to have you stand by, Stephen, as well. Deborah Opry is standing by. She's in Santa Maria outside the courthouse, the spokeswoman for the Michael Jackson family, for the Michael Jackson team. Deborah, give us your reaction.
Are we ready here, guys? I am not shocked. I expected it. Did I cry? Yeah. Am I going to cry again? Yeah. After a year, the stress is just melting away, and I'm so happy for Catherine, Joe, Michael, LaToya, Janet, Tito, Jackie, Jermaine, and Randy. What a family, and what a jury, and what an attorney, and Tom Mesereau and his crew. I'm
Deborah,
so proud tonight.
Did you have a chance to speak with Michael since the not guilty verdicts were announced?
I spoke with the family as they were exiting, and they're all very happy and very relieved. And
what
I have to make sure...
Did they tell you, Deborah, what their game plan is now? Are they going to make a statement? Will we hear from Michael?
Their game plan was to get into the SUVs and go home.
And just to relax and to absorb what has happened. When you say you weren't surprised, you have to admit you were a little surprised, Deborah, weren't you?
No. I expected the acquittal. The media pundits are, they have their own courtroom, the courtroom of public opinion. And it's not fair, it's not right, and I took this cause on because I believe the jury trial should be in a courtroom.
Deborah, give us one additional thought right now as you look back on these 14 weeks of the trial. What was the biggest mistake from your perspective that the prosecution made?
They brought charges against Michael Jackson with the wrong accuser.
He was not credible. Is that what you're saying, the young boy?
That's absolutely what I'm saying.
All right, Deborah Opry is an attorney for the Jackson family, spending a few moments as well. Thomas Snedden is the prosecutor. He's speaking right now.
And I've been a prosecutor for 37 years, and 37 years I've never quarreled with a jury's verdict, and I'm not going to start today. So basically, that's all we really had to say. I'll answer a few questions, but I'm probably not going to remain too long. So if anybody has a question far away,
I think we're going to start over here.
See how it goes.
Can you hear me okay?
I certainly can.
Right. Have you spoken with the accuser and his family, and if so, what was their mood and the reaction to the verdict today?
No. As to all.
You addressed the defense's allegation throughout the trial that you rushed into this prosecution because of your past history with Mr. Jackson.
My past history of Mr. Jackson had absolutely, unequivocally, nothing to do with our evaluation of this particular case. That's been a nice little 30-second soundbite that the media has used to try to justify this thing, but it had never had anything to do with either the sheriff's investigation or our decision to file.
Can you address the fans' claim that the Santa Barbara DA was somehow trying to frame Michael Jackson, and all of this really is an elaborate scheme to frame Michael Jackson and make him look guilty?
I just answered that question.
Mr. Snedden, in retrospect, do you think you had the wrong family on the stand?
I don't know how much work you do in the criminal justice system, but the system I worked in for 37 years is that people come in and they're the victims of crime. We don't select our victims, and we don't select the families they come from. What we do is we evaluate the case. We try to make a conscientious decision as to whether or not we have enough evidence to go forward. And that's what we did in this case. We've done it in every other case since I've been the district attorney in this county, and we will continue to do that as long as I'm district attorney of this county.
Stand by what the family said in court.
I think that's evident.
There have been a lot of claims that because of the gag order you haven't been able to address. I mean, fans have, even Jackson's mother has said that you have some involvement with the Ku Klux Klan. Fans have claimed that you have relatives who are among the witnesses. Do you want to address any of those now that you finally can?
They're all false. We all did our job. We did it conscientiously. And anybody who knows Tom Snedden, knows Gordon Auchincloss, and knows Ron Zonin, and the things that we've done in our community and the families that we have, knows all of that to be untrue. And if people would simply take the time to investigate the allegation before they print it, they'd know it's untrue also.
Have you looked into, and do you have concerns of reports that at least one of the jurors was peddling a book deal?
I had heard that.
You had heard that?
Yes.
And did you have concerns about that? And was it looked into?
Let's just say that it was taken care of by the court.
Would you reflect for just one moment on the conspiracy charge? Do you think that it might have been a better case without conspiracy, only child molestation?
I've learned a very expensive lesson in life a long time ago. That is, you never look back, you always look forward.
Tom, is this the end of your office pursuing Michael Jackson?
No comment.
What do you do now?
I don't think you want to know. I've been told not to crack any jokes, so we go back to work. We got a lot of cases that have been pending. I have an office to run. We're having budget hearings today. We're professionals, and we'll continue to act as professionals the way we act professionally in this case. And I'm not going to look back and apologize for anything we've done. We did a very conscientious, thorough job, as did the Sheriff's Department, investigating this case.
Would you answer the question whether witnesses that you put on the stand surprised you when they testified?
I mean, I'm not going to get into the trial. I just say that the experience of any trial lawyer like Gordon or Ron or anybody in my office, for that matter, who tries felonies is you never have a case where a witness, you don't get some surprises on both sides in both ways. And I think Mr. Mesereau would tell you the same thing. And that's a product of being a trial lawyer, and you learn to adjust and you go on.
Why did you go ahead with the case when you knew the mother in particular to be such a troublesome witness?
I don't think the media generally understands the responsibility of a prosecutor. And I'll answer it this way, and the simple thing is, when a victim comes in and the victim tells you they've been victimized, and you believe that, and you believe that the evidence supports that, you don't look at their pedigree. We look at what we think is what's right. You do the right things for the right reasons. If it doesn't work out, that's why we have a jury system. But we did the right thing for the right reasons.
Do you have any problem with the judge reading the jury notes privately without releasing to the media last Friday and having that?
Listen, the judge is the judge. He has a prerogative to do and run his court the way he wants. I have no criticism of the judge.
Do you think that's constitutional and you don't have any problem with that?
You know, Greta, I just, you know, the judge has done what he's done, and that's the way we have to live with what, as you know, what the judge does. I have no criticism of the judge whatsoever, none.
Tom, if there were pivotal moments in the trial when you thought it was going one way or the other, what were they?
I didn't think there were any.
Mr. Snedden?
I didn't. I just that the case
if you
went on.
If someone came to you now with strong allegations of molestation on the part of Michael Jackson, what would you do?
We'd review it like any other case we review in our office, just like we reviewed this one.
You wouldn't shy from it now?
Well, the answer to the question truthfully is I probably wouldn't if it was a good case. But I think we all learned some lessons here that we thought we had a good case this time. And we thought we did a conscientious job, and the Sheriff's Department did a remarkable job of investigating it. But no, the people in this county elected me to do a job, and I've tried to do that conscientiously. And I'll continue to do that the same way.
Child molester has escaped unpunished?
No comment. Okay?
Do you hope that Mr. Jackson leaves Santa Barbara County?
No comment.
Can I just ask, what was your assessment of the defense team and how they did in this trial?
I absolutely have no comment about that.
Do you have any estimate on the cost?
No.
You mentioned you'd learned some lessons. What lessons have you learned?
Well, I was referring probably more than anything else to the celebrity factor.
Can you elaborate?
I'm not the Lone Ranger in that faction.
Why does it take so long to try this case?
Actually, I thought the case went pretty fast, considering what the original estimates were. We were in trial for February, March, April, May.
So you don't think trials seem to take a little longer in California than...
Well, they definitely take a lot longer than they do in the South.
I'll give you that one.
Well.
Tom, when you walked into the courtroom, did you have an inkling what the verdict was?
No.
No?
We obviously had our aspirations, but certainly I had no inkling.
You mentioned the celebrity factor. Do you think that's played a key part?
Well, it seems to us, but maybe we're just looking for explanations in the wrong places. I don't know. Okay, any other questions? If you don't, we have some unfinished business. All right, thank you very much.
Thomas Snedden, the district attorney, the prosecutor in this case, who loses all 10 counts, not guilty. Michael Jackson found not guilty, unanimous decision on the part of the 12 men and women who considered all of the counts for several weeks, 14 weeks of testimony, 7 days of actual deliberation, some 32 hours, and a clear and decisive unanimous win for Michael Jackson. That wraps up our particular part of the coverage, but Lou Dobbs is standing by in New York to pick up CNN's coverage. Lou?
That's right, Wolf. Our part begins now. Good evening, everybody. Tonight, Michael Jackson is a free man. A California jury has just acquitted him on all 10 charges in the child molestation case against him. A 1.5-year-long case. The verdict read less than an hour ago.
We, the jury, in the above entitled case, find the defendant not guilty of conspiracy as charged in count 1 of the indictment, dated June 13, 2005, foreperson number 80.
All 10 counts, the verdict the same, not guilty. We'll have tonight extensive coverage of the verdicts, reaction from Michael Jackson's fans, the legal community, and from all around the country. Ted Rowlands will report from the courthouse in Santa Maria, California. CNN legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin joining us tonight from Washington, D.C. Christine Romans here in New York reporting on the media circus surrounding this 1.5-year-long case. Kitty Pilgrim reports on how the verdict could impact Michael Jackson's career. We begin tonight with Ted Rowlands outside the courthouse in Santa Maria. Ted.
Lou, inside the courtroom, Michael Jackson dabbed his eyes with Kleenex when listening to the jurors' decisions count by count of not guilty. Surrounding him, his family members, his mother, his father, sister, and brothers, all there. Afterwards, Jackson hugged his lead attorney, Thomas Mesereau, and the 2 other attorneys at the table, Bob Sanger and Susan Yu. And then he exited the courthouse here, waving to fans, but making no public statement. Thomas Mesereau, on the way out, did make one statement saying, quote, "Justice was done. The man's innocent. He always was." Outside the courthouse, fans erupted after hearing the first not guilty count and then sat and listened as the jury, as the clerk read the 9 other not guilty counts. Each time they cheered, and when the 10th was finally read, they cheered for an extended period of time, hugging and throwing items up in the air, confetti. Now at this hour, things have died down at the courthouse. Michael Jackson's caravan is still on U.S. Highway 101. Not sure where he is going. Safe to say he is celebrating tonight. Lou?
Celebrating, we're told now, Ted, that he is less than 5 minutes away from his Neverland Ranch, the epicenter of what turned out to be a 1.5-year-long ordeal for the King of Pop. Ted, give us some sense of your impressions of Michael Jackson. He has spent more time, in fact, on the road between Neverland Ranch today and returning to Neverland than in the courtroom to hear his fate. Your impressions, how did he look? Your sense of the King of Pop?
Well, in recent months, each time Jackson has come to this courthouse, he has been reserved. Little waves to the fans. Today he appeared, as everybody around him did, very, very nervous, walking into the courtroom. On the way out, we expected maybe a little bit more of a visual celebration, but we didn't see that. On the way out, he did acknowledge fans. There was no smile. His family, too, quite reserved, given the fact that Michael Jackson came so close to going to prison and now is a free man tonight. Clearly, it is setting in with this family. His defense team was clearly elated as they walked out in a stern manner, however, and this has been Michael Jackson over the past few months. The days of dancing on the SUVs are over. He has been a very reserved plaintiff and was reserved here again today.
A reserved Jackson family, a reserved, if you will, constrained Michael Jackson today as he left the courtroom a free man, Ted. The people there, the supporters and the curious onlookers as well, their demeanor as the verdict was learned amongst the crowd?
Oh, anything but reserved. They had to quiet down after each verdict because they wanted to hear what was coming next. But clearly, jubilation after each of the 10 counts were read. They could hear the counts being read in live over an audio feed outside the courthouse, and you could see the jubilation in their face as each of these 10 verdicts were read.
Ted Rowlands from outside the courthouse. Thank you. CNN legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin has been following the Jackson trial closely since it began. He joins us tonight from Washington, D.C. Jeffrey, I know that you had some considerable judgment about the strength of a number of the counts overall. The 10 not guilty verdicts, is that what you expected?
You know, I would be great to say in hindsight, I knew it all along. You know, I wasn't sure what the verdict was here. The one count I really was pretty sure of was the count 1, the conspiracy count, where the government alleged that Michael Jackson conspired with his employees to imprison the accuser's family after the Martin Bashir documentary ran in February of 2003. And, you know, that case, that count was not only a very weak count in and of itself, and that much was clear, it also was a terrible albatross for the prosecution because it brought in all sorts of evidence about the accuser's family, and frankly, they did not stand up well to scrutiny. The accuser's mother was an eccentric, at best, witness. The accuser himself was not a great witness. His brother, his sister, all of them had substantial credibility problems, and I think that was ultimately the reason the government couldn't prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Beyond a reasonable doubt, despite direct testimony to lewd acts, molestation on the part of employees of Neverland, former employees of Neverland Ranch, as well as the accuser. But at the same time, strong denials from witnesses that were expected to support, to bolster the prosecution. And I'm thinking here particularly of Jackson's former wife, Debbie Rowe. How important in your judgment was her testimony?
I think it was important. I think what was especially important for the defense is that all of the testimony fit within their theme, which was that this family were grifters, that they saw Michael Jackson as an opportunity to make money. Their claims against Jackson were part of a pattern in their life. And, you know, one extremely important part of this case was that this family had sued J.C. Penney for an incident that allegedly took place in a parking lot at J.C. Penney. And it was very clear to me, and I suspect to the jury, that both the accuser and his mother gave false testimony in that case in order to make money, including allegations of a sexual kind of abuse of the mother. And Thomas Mesereau very effectively made the point that, see, this is what they do. This is a pattern. They make sexual allegations to make money.
Excuse me, Jeffrey, let me interrupt. Obviously, the Jackson motorcade is pulling up along a gauntlet, if you will, of Jackson supporters who gathered outside his Neverland Ranch. He is arriving at the entrance to that sprawling 3,000-acre facility, which includes, of course, the amusement park and the homes. It is an extraordinarily large property, a state, if you will. And in just about a 2-hour span, Jackson has learned his fate. He has returned to Neverland a free man, and that in itself surprising many observers and many analysts who had listened to all of this testimony. And Brooke Anderson is they're at Neverland, and Jeffrey, bear with me. We're going to go to Brooke Anderson to get the latest. Brooke.
Hi there, Lou. Yes, as each minute passed since the verdict was announced, more and more people gathered here outside of the gates. You can see them outside of the gates. Many of them fans, many of them just people curious to see Michael Jackson. His motorcade did arrive a few moments ago. Windows were rolled down. I couldn't tell if Michael was waving to the fans, but I did see some hands come out of the windows and wave to the fans. Earlier, a few minutes before that, it looked like the entire, or part of the staff, Michael Jackson's Neverland staff, walked up to the gates and shook their hands in jubilation and cheered with the fans. Some Neverland employees have been leaving the gates in their cars, many of them smiling, pumping their fists in triumph. We do have some law enforcement on hand here now. Several highway patrol cars are here, so there is a presence of law enforcement, some officers here. The helicopters are hovering overhead. There are 3 helicopters monitoring Jackson and his arrival at Neverland Ranch. I do want to say that the fans outside are celebrating right now, and it's interesting to point out, about a week and a half ago, Jackson's main security guy walked out, held an impromptu speech with the fans, and said that at the appropriate time they would have a celebration. We don't know what Jackson and his folks have planned. We don't know when that will happen, if it's formal or informal, who's invited. But right now, a theme of jubilation and triumph here among the fans and Jackson and his family. Lou.
Brooke, I have to believe that the planning is now a great deal more rigorous than it was before they knew of this verdict. Brooke Anderson outside the Neverland Ranch, and Michael Jackson has returned home with his fate now clear and his freedom assured. Jeffrey Toobin, let's return to your point on the pattern that you perceived in both the prosecution's attack against Jackson and the defense's rallying points.
Well, I mean, what made the defense so effective here is that it wasn't just this one incident that they could point to. They could say that this is a mother who, you know, had tried to cheat on welfare, who had tried to make money improperly out of her son's disease, who had filed this very questionable lawsuit against J.C. Penney. So, you know, they could tell a story, and juries, you know, always understand stories rather than sort of individual facts. And their story hung together. However, the prosecution had a story here too, and they were allowed to tell it. They brought 5 other stories before the jury of other molestation by
and they were able
alleged
to
molestation.
do that, Jeffrey, because of a change in California law, correct?
A California law, California Evidence Code section 1108 that interestingly was changed fairly recently because of the molestation case against Catholic priests. That earlier law had not allowed prior conduct of these accused priests to be brought before the jury, and the California legislature thought it was a good thing to be allowed to have this evidence brought before them. The law was changed. The prosecution here made very extensive use of that law, probably more than has ever been done before. Frankly, I thought it was pretty effective evidence. Jury didn't buy it.
And let me ask you this, Jeffrey. The judge actually telling the jurors today not to be guarded in their responses to the press. More than 2,000 reporters there to cover the trial. He encouraged them to speak to the press. Your thoughts?
Very uncharacteristic of Judge Melville. He has conducted the closest thing to a secret trial that I have seen. He didn't release the indictment until the jury was picked. There was no release of the questions from the jury during jury deliberations, something that I've never seen before. So I guess he now feels that since the trial is utterly and completely over, doesn't matter anymore, but it's certainly uncharacteristic with how he tried the rest of the case.
Jeffrey Toobin, as always, thank you. We're going to ask you if you would to stay with us. We're going to ask you to join a number of other prominent attorneys, defense attorneys, and prosecutors as we further analyze today's acquittal of Michael Jackson. We're going now to the courthouse in Santa Maria, California, where jurors have moved before the cameras and microphones, and let's hear what they have to say.
8.
Number 6.
Seat number 10.
2.
Seat number 3.
Seat number 11.
Okay. The acoustics in this room, I need to ask you to just speak up. You're actually great on microphone, but the folk in the back can't hear. Okay, in the second row, please.
148.
But what juror seat number were you in the box?
I was an alternate 1.
Thank you. Alternate 1.
9.
9.
I'm 5. 12.
Number 1.
4.
Alternate number 2. Alternate number 7.
Alternate number 5.
Alternate number 8.
As you're listening to the jurors identify themselves for the press and media there at the press conference for the jurors, you can obviously see that interesting in the composition of this jury, not a single African American sat on this jury. and only 4 were minority, Hispanic and Asian, 8 women and 4 men. Let's listen in.
The accuser's testimony, as well as about the obvious absence of the boy from the 93 investigation.
And who are you asking that question of?
Number 2.
I would rather not comment on that right now. Maybe somebody else would like to answer that.
Anyone at all? Anyone comfortable with that? Let's move on, and maybe we'll come back as we move through. Let me turn then to the Associated Press.
Hi, I'm Linda Deutsch of Associated Press. It's nice to be able to talk to you all after looking at you for so many months. I'm wondering if there were any disagreements in the jury room when you first went in, or did you quickly find that all of you were pretty much in agreement? Any one of you can answer, perhaps number 5. We've been looking at each other across the room.
We've been smiling at each other,
That's
too.
Right.
I think we all just looked at the evidence and pretty much agreed. Wouldn't you say so? Number 3?
Oh, we came in with our personal beliefs, but we did look at the evidence. We all came in with our personal beliefs, and some of those did differ, but we spent a lot of time really seriously studying the evidence and looking at the testimony and the jury instructions, and obviously came to an agreement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you pay attention at all or see all the sort of media circus out here? And if so,
That answer, the first surprise of what may be a number, most of the analysts and observers had expected, because 32 hours, almost 32 hours of deliberation were required to reach today's verdicts, that there was considerable differences of view on the evidence and judgment about Michael Jackson's innocence or guilt, and that was quickly dispelled with the first answers.
Trying to stay as private and quiet as possible.
anyone else want to add on the media, have thought on the media? You all jumped at us.
I felt it the first time that I really felt the presence and stuff, I think, was our second day out of jury deliberations, when we all walked out to the van together, and seeing all those people on the right of us and on the left of us, it kind of hit you like, oh my God, where'd they all come from? And that, but you know, we could hear, you know, the media going back and forth and everything when we were outside and stuff, but otherwise it didn't really bother us that much at all.
Anyone else? Please, sir.
I think by the time we got to deliberation, we had all been so conditioned to the media that it didn't make any difference anymore. That was my personal feeling.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
But what number, sir? Just one more time, your number?
Number 1.
Number 1, thank you. Turning across the aisle.
CNN, juror number 1. I know you said in your statement that you meticulously all went through the evidence and that sort of thing, but what stands out in your mind as the most important thing that swayed you, that made you feel it was that you had to vote not guilty in this case?
I can't really point to any one specific item right now. I mean, there were tons of evidence to consider, and to pick one item out is really difficult. And I would just say that we considered all of the evidence, and of course, since it's a criminal trial, it had to be beyond a reasonable doubt. And in looking at all of the evidence and not just one specific item, I mean, that's the conclusion we arrived at. And I think we really worked hard and were very careful in making that decision.
Any testimony, though, that just stood out in your mind, that kind of in your own head you thought, well, this isn't right, I just can't?
As I sit here right now, I can't point to anything specific.
Okay, across the aisle.
Hi, Quentin Kushner from the Santa Maria Times. Just curious, what was your opinion of the attorneys' performances, both from the prosecution and the defense, as they tried this case, for anybody?
I think they're all wonderful litigators, very well prepared on both sides.
I'd like to. I think it was a sight to see, because I've never seen anything like this, and you've seen it on TV all the time, and now you actually see it up close and personal, and it's like, wow, you know. For my first time doing jury duty, this is It's pretty interesting, to say the least.
And we got to see their faces like you guys didn't. So when stuff was going on, we could see, you know, their sighs or their yes and stuff like that, and we could see what they were thinking in their selves there.
Anyone else have a feeling? Okay, let's move on to across the aisle.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Salvador Duran. I'm with Telemundo, Channel 52, Los Angeles. I would like to find out if the fact that Michael Jackson is an international superstar, what role did that play in your decision making? And I would also like to ask Mr. Foreman if any of you speak Spanish, to also, after you answer my question, to briefly make a statement in Spanish to for the large Spanish audience across the United States.
Well, personally, I think we looked at all the evidence. We looked at Michael Jackson, and one of the first things we decided that we had to look at him as just like any other individual, not just as a celebrity. And once we got that established, that we could go beyond that, we were able to deal with it just as fairly as we could with anybody else.
Do you speak Spanish, sir?
I'd rather have her answer
Oh,
in
I
Spanish.
Just tell us just what your thoughts on the fact that Michael Jackson is a megastar known around the world. En español, por favor. ¿Qué piensa, señora?
No creo que podría comunicar bien.
No está muy bien.
No creo que podría hacerlo al momento.
Okay. Pero ¿qué piensa en general del resultado final?
El resultado en general, creo que tuvimos mucha consideración en los testimonios de las personas que vinieron aquí y tomamos en consideración la evidencia y basado a eso hicimos nuestra conclusión.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much. And going across the way to your question.
I wanted to direct this question mainly to the parents on the jury, somebody with children. And some of the more troubling evidence to many observers was about Mr. Jackson sleeping in bed with children. And I was wondering if you found that troubling or believable, and B, if you would approve if your own children would do such a thing.
And were you asking that of...
Any parents on the jury? I see you nodding, ma'am. I could like to ask you.
Well, as a parent, you know, it's something that you are constantly, every moment of your day, you're protective over what happens to your children. And I guess I might be speaking maybe for myself and a few others, jurors, that, you know, what mother in her right mind would allow that to happen, or you know, just freely volunteer your child, you know, to sleep with someone, and not just so much Michael Jackson, but any person for that matter. So that's something, you know, that mothers, I think, are naturally concerned with.
So did you feel that the mother in the case was at fault rather than Mr. Jackson?
I'd like to comment on that, but I believe at this time I probably shouldn't.
We're going to turn to Kendall Coffey now, one of the foremost legal experts in the country, one of the leaders of the bar. Kendall, you're listening to this jury reacting. You've seen the verdicts. Give us your assessment of what happened here and why.
Well, they led off with the observation about reasonable doubt. You always wonder in a trial if the jury's really going to pay strict attention to that, because this case clearly had a lot of question marks, as well as a lot of evidence that was very, very troubling. They honored the judge's instructions. At the end of the day, this was a reasonable doubt case. The other very clear thing that at least is starting to develop, as we heard from one of the comments, is the mother. The defense strategy was, hey, let's not put Michael Jackson on trial. Let's put the accused mothers on trial. And you heard the comment moments ago, Lou, what mother would entrust her child to a Michael Jackson or anyone else? So the defense had a very clear theme. They basically took the position that this was a scheming, scamming mom who taught her kids to lie in order to hit the jackpot for millions of dollars. And at the very least, the power of that thesis created a reasonable doubt.
You also heard the jurors, those four that we listened to just now, there in Santa Maria. they were talking about not being overwhelmed by the media, overwhelmed by the superstar status of Michael Jackson. At the same time, there was a sense of, it seemed to me at least, of some considerable awe at the entire spectacle. What was your sense?
Well, these were everyday people, of course, in anything but an everyday situation. But I got the sense that they really did try to look at Michael Jackson, not as this really strange guy or as an international celebrity. They really tried to look at him as a defendant and what was the quality of the evidence against him. For many of us, we thought that some of the past accusations, particularly two of the witnesses that weren't really impeached, might be enough to cook his goose. After all, if it looked like he might be a child molester, is it that important whether or not he committed the transgressions in this case? Clearly, when the jury went back to reading back the alleged victim himself, they were focusing right where they needed to be. Not whatever he's done, not what kind of person he is, not what they think of his lifestyle, but did he actually commit the alleged crimes that are before him in this particular trial?
There's no question that this is the trial of this decade and the trial of the last decade and the last century, obviously. O.J. Simpson, defense attorney Robert Shapiro, part of the defense team for O.J. Simpson, joining us now from Los Angeles. Your thoughts on this, on the verdict, your sense going into it as to whether or not Michael Jackson would be found guilty or not guilty?
First, Lou, I could not be more impressed with this jury. Clearly, they did follow the judge's instructions. And so often we talk to jurors after a case, and they go off on tangents that nobody thought about. That didn't happen in this case. I think one of the overwhelming things that you learn in a case like this is this was brought as a case of child molestation. But it began when the mother came with the young boy to a lawyer, a very, very famous lawyer, Larry Feldman, who had happened to represent Jordy Chandler in the 1993 incident. That started the ball rolling, and I think that in and of itself caused a lot of problems for the jury. The second thing, and equally important, is the prosecution overtried this case. This was a case of child molestation. It wasn't about kidnapping, wasn't about extortion, and it wasn't about conspiracy. It was about whether or not a little boy was molested. And then finally, one of the things that's always bothered me in this media age, Lou, is when lawyers, including myself, and the press are commenting without actually seeing the witness on the witness stand. How in the world can any of us begin to judge credibility of a witness who says he was molested without seeing, hearing, and feeling this person in the courtroom?
Jeffrey Toobin, your job is to do much of what Robert Shapiro has outlined, and you do it brilliantly. Your thoughts?
Well, I think, you know, one of the several institutions that's going to have some questions to answer as a result of this verdict is the press. There has been, you know, a lot of negative attention on Michael Jackson and a lot of repetition of the charges, including leaks that apparently came from law enforcement in this case. And I think Michael Jackson was tried and convicted in the press in at least many quarters before this case even began. And I think this case is a good reminder that, you know, you're never guilty until a jury says you are, and prosecutors shouldn't try their cases in the press. They should do it. They need to do it in front of juries. And this case was a lot less effective in front of a jury than it was when selected reporters were given salacious tidbits over the past several years.
And this has turned into, as Jeffrey, as you know, it has, if the O.J. Simpson trial was a media circus, this is the media circus and caravan extended. The way the media has responded to this case has been remarkable, simply because Michael Jackson, in part, I say simply because, in part because it is a simple axiom that a superstar will have certainly more travail than a mere star like O.J. Simpson. Michael Jackson, as big as he is, attracting something like 2,200 journalists to Santa Maria.
Yeah, and the real distinction between the two of them that seemed to me, and I covered both, is that, you know, the Simpson case was a very much American phenomenon. O.J. Simpson was an American football player, an American broadcaster, and the trial was broadcast live in America. Michael Jackson, at this point in his career, is probably a bigger star internationally than he is in the United States. And what struck me was the number of reporters from around the world who were in Santa Maria. You know, the CNN had sort of an official camera location, and I remember to the right, you know, over the course of the time I was there, which was not the full trial, there were reporters from Germany, from Japan, from Mexico, and that was just one camera location. The international degree of interest in Jackson is something that we've never seen before in an American trial.
Jeffrey Toobin, thank you very much. Well, this trial, as we said and you've seen demonstrated over the course of the past year and a half, has been nothing less than a media circus. The singer's legal problems have sold millions of magazines, provided hours and hours of material for news and entertainment outlets all around the world in every form of media. Christine Romans joins us with the story. Christine?
Lou, for months now, Michael Jackson's trial has provided the world media with endless material, an astonishing number of media there at the courthouse. As we said, more than 2,200 reporters from 34 countries have the credentials to cover this trial. Then there's the crush of satellite trucks drawing hundreds, some days thousands of fans. This is, after all, a man who made his name dancing in music videos. And since the day Michael Jackson danced on the top of his SUV at his arraignment, the press has run unapologetically with this story. Cable news networks, including CNN, breaking every morning of this trial into live coverage of Jackson's arrival at court, with as much commentary of his hair, his clothes, his health, as his legal problems. And the witnesses, Jay Leno, Chris Tucker, Macaulay Culkin, the press pack's dream. And it's not just magazines. Cable news, newspapers, the weblogs have also been alive with theories and opinions on the singer's guilt or innocence. And just this weekend, an international computer virus carried rumors of a Michael Jackson suicide. But what about the weight of this legitimate story? His music videos influenced a generation of teenagers. That's a medium that he really engineered and rode to the crest of his popularity. But this story now combined pop culture, race, age, alleged pedophilia, and a voracious media repackaged it all endlessly. This will not be the last that's written about Michael Jackson, but for today, Lou, the press pack has a new lead. That lead is not guilty.
Not guilty on 10 counts, despite what has been a year and a half of the finest analysis by the finest legal minds and some of the most interesting analysis coming from people who weren't even near Santa Maria, California. Thank you very much, Christine Robbins. Years of scandal, bizarre behavior, of course, contributing to some of Jackson's problems and certainly damaging his career. But he is nonetheless a global superstar, now acquitted on 10 counts, and a global superstar that still must be reckoned with. Katie Pilgrim is here with a look.
Lou, we're talking about his international star status. Over the course of his career, Michael Jackson has made about an estimated $500 million in revenues. Let's take a look at the start of his fortune. Came in the 1980s, release of album Thriller, $65 million deal, 1991 recording deal with Sony. Now, when Thriller was released in 1983, it became the largest selling album in history, 26 million copies, and then it went on to become one of the most commercially successful albums of all time. On top of that, it generated successful hit singles. Each of those singles had promotional videos that increased the song's reach and popularity. Now, the album Bad was released in 1987. That sold 22 million copies worldwide. Heal the World, Jackson sang 1991. This was enormous international success. And those international sales gave him extraordinary financial power. Now, what's interesting is here, take Europe, for example. The scandal has not followed him across the Atlantic to such a degree, while his reputation in the United States really declined. He got that sort of wacko jacko moniker. In Europe, he was somewhat protected. So here's the split out on Thriller's sales. They were almost evenly split. 24 million international, 23 million in the United States. Let's look at Dangerous and History, both released in the 1990s. U.S. sales, 9 million. International sales, still strong, $26 million. These figures according to Sony. They're rough figures. Invincible in 2001. Here's where you can start to see the trend. Climbed to the top of the charts, Australia, Europe, Turkey, the United States. But this weird behavior is starting to turn fans off globally. He sold about 3 million international copies, about 2 million in the United States. Still respectable numbers, but you can certainly see the decline because of the bizarre behavior. Now, going forward, there's really no question about his artistic ability. So there is a very good possibility that he could make a startling comeback.
Well, of course, while there's no question about his talent, there's a great deal of question about his marketability, particularly in the United States, and a lot of questions about whether all that has happened, a man stripped of his dignity over the course of the past year and a half, the problems that go back to 12 years with the previous run-in with Tom Sneddon, the prosecutor in Santa Barbara, all of that will have a play. Kitty Pilgrim, thank you very much. Coming up next year, we're going to be looking at precisely that issue. We'll have much more for you on the Jackson verdict. Again, 10 counts, not guilty, and we'll be taking a look at the impact of this trial and acquittal, certainly on Jackson's fortune and his career. Is his career over, or is there a possibility of resurgence for the King of Pop? I'll be talking with Rolling Stone magazine's Anthony DeCurtis. Stay with us.
Want to bounce back fast from tough pain? Get the only leading brand with real liquid inside. Advil Liquid Gels. Faster and stronger than extra strength Tylenol and tough pain. Advil Liquid Gels rush relief right where you need it. Advil Liquid Gels. Liquid fast. Advil strong.
2 thumbs way up for Cinderella Man. A masterpiece. It's not only the must-see movie of the summer, it's the best film of the year. Cinderella Man, rated PG-13, now playing.
How do ExxonMobil refineries save energy? One way is to capture the heat and steam that would otherwise be wasted and use them. It stops a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, it's like taking 1 million cars off the world's roads every year.
The HP Blade System server powered by Intel Xeon processors. Consolidation made easy.
Lucky me. I got a Splenda Daddy.
All the sweetest dads know about Splenda, the no-calorie sweetener made from sugar so it tastes like sugar. Almost anywhere you use sugar, you can use Splenda.
Are you a homeowner with a credit problem or a low FICO score? Would you like to consolidate bills and lower your monthly payments? Then call or log on to ditech.com. We can help you to get a new low fixed-rate mortgage that will pay off your current debts and lower your monthly payments by hundreds of dollars. There are no broker or middleman fees because you're dealing direct. If approved, you can get the credit and cash you need right now. Log on to ditech.com or call 1-800-80-DITECH.
After today's across-the-board acquittal for Michael Jackson, what is next for his career? Can he make a comeback? Rolling Stone magazine contributing editor Anthony DeCurtis, CNN Headline News, Showbiz Tonight co-anchor Catherine Bryant. They join us here with their thoughts. Let me turn to you first, Anthony. The idea that Michael Jackson, after all that he's been through, can he still have a career? Anything even reminiscent of the status he's enjoyed?
Reminiscent of the status of Thriller? No, that's never going to happen again. But it was not going to happen again even despite these charges. I mean, I think Michael has to get to a point where, he just kind of focuses, becomes a more recognizable person to his fans, and makes a great record.
Put it in some perspective for us. How big is big?
Well, Thriller is one of the 2 best-selling records of all time.
What's the other, just out of curiosity?
The Eagles' Greatest Hits, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
Yeah. And they go neck and neck, and one, sort of gets ahead of the other now and then. But you're talking about 22 million copies in the United States alone, close to 40 million around the world. Yeah, I mean, you don't get that twice, you know, and that I think is also kind of crippled Michael's creativity. I think he's become obsessed with trying to recreate that, and that is never going to happen. So setting aside, I mean, what is obviously a very happy day for him, and setting aside all the charges and other things that have complicated his career, creatively, he has been in a rut, and, you know, he needs to do something very dramatic to get out of that.
Karen, in your judgment, can he?
Potentially, if he, like Anthony's saying, works with some more modern producers, perhaps, and radically changes his image, perhaps comes out as a grown-up artist and stops trying to recreate the glory of Thriller. I mean, it did sell 26 million albums. You're not going to get to do that again, but if there's some way for him to reinvent, work with some new songwriters, don't necessarily try to cash in on exactly what the young people are doing, be your own artist, be more grown up, but still be a little more current and a little bit more relevant.
Is there an implication here that you can see for the music industry itself? Is he, before this trial, was he through, because that's almost what I hear both of you saying on a certain level.
Well, certainly.
But now that because of a year-and-a-half ordeal that has just had to be the most punishing experience one could imagine in a courtroom, that this might offer him a new hope, in point of fact.
Well, yes. In fact, as of numbers released in late May, he had sold 257,000 albums this year so far. It doesn't have a new album out, but it's still selling records. Sold over 1 million last year. The last album, Invincible, came out. That was the last one with original songs. It didn't do so well. That was in 2001. He was certainly waning in popularity, but the greatest hits came out in 2003. People bought that. I was one of them. You know, I think he's certainly been on the decline for some time.
Anthony, the king of pop, and as you point out, when I ask you what the second best-selling, he may be the king of pop. I'm not the king of pop culture. I'll tell you, in the television news business.
That's quite all right.
But the money issue here. This is a man who's lived lavishly throughout his career. We hear story after story that he is in big financial trouble. This had to cost his fortune a great deal. How much of that fortune is left in your judgment? What is his financial condition?
Well, Michael's main asset at this point is he owns half of the Beatles catalog in a deal with Sony. And this decision today, in fact, I mean, this might be its most dramatic effect. You know, Michael is never going to be the guy who made Thriller, you know, or has success on that level. But as far as, you know, the immediate crisis of people's willingness to loan him money or people's willingness to restructure his debts, this, I think, makes all of that possible. And I think that Michael's financial crisis, if not exactly over, is going to be much easier for him to deal with as a result of getting a not guilty verdict on every single count.
Karen Bryant, Showbiz Tonight, headlines. And Anthony DeCurtis, we thank you. Rolling Stone Magazine.
Pleasure to be here.
Guiding me through pop culture. Thank you both. Joining us again now is Ted Rowlands outside the courthouse in Santa Maria, California. Ted, is there still a crowd there? Because it seems like it's still bustling.
Well, there's a lot of media, but the fans have pretty much gotten up and left, and they have headed to Neverland, driven the 40 minutes plus to hang out outside the gates of Neverland. Undoubtedly, they are hoping that those gates will open and allow them in for some sort of victory celebration. Whether or not that happens, I think they'll be celebrating throughout the night here. They were out in force when the verdicts were read here. You could hear a pin drop outside the courthouse. When the verdicts were read, they would erupt after each not guilty verdict and then calm down and listen to the next one. When it was all over, the party started, and as I say, that party continues tonight at the Neverland Ranch, in and outside.
All right, Ted Rowlands, who has performed a human duty, sterling duty, there at Santa Maria for a very long time. We thank you very much, Ted. Michael Jackson acquitted on 10 counts tonight. His trial lasted 60 days. Deliberations took the jury just about 32 hours. More than 140 witnesses to consider. Joining us after the break with their thoughts on this case will be Harlan Levy. He's former Manhattan District Attorney Harlan Levy and renowned criminal defense attorney Mickey Sherman. They join us here next to tell us what went wrong for the prosecution, what the defense did exactly right. Stay with us.
It used to be stocks and bonds alone were all you needed. At Merrill Lynch, our financial advisors know it's different today. We'll help all your money. Cash, investments, mortgages, retirement. Work harder together. That's Total Merrill.
Tonight on Newsnight, now that the jury has spoken, we go behind the not guilty verdict in the Michael Jackson trial and inside the circus. Newsnight, CNN, 10 p.m.
Governor Kulongoski thinks Oregon needs another casino. So he's changing state policy to build the first Indian casino off reservation lands. A huge casino, nearly 2,000 slot machines in the Columbia River Gorge, Oregon's greatest natural treasure. It's a bad idea. It'll mean even more casinos off tribal lands, and it'll trash the gorge. Tell Governor Kulongoski no. Ask Washington, D.C. to stop the Gorge Casino. Oregon deserves better.
Jason from California.
Kathy, Michigan.
Today, thousands of people will go to Progressive.com, where they'll get their quote for car insurance and see what other people have been quoted as well. Whether Progressive is the highest or the lowest, you'll see it all. Go to Progressive.com, because the more you know, the easier it is to make a smart decision.
You wish you could do in real life. Now you can do at VX.com. Roadmap to the automotive world.
No matter what moves you, Progressive Direct is the insurance expert. For cars, boats, motorcycles, and whatever else you love to drive or ride. We're always focused on making things better and easier, whether you're getting a quote or getting back on the road. Visit Progressive.com. Think easier. Think Progressive.
Bringing you the world for 25 years. This is CNN.
Rusty Dornan in the courtroom when the verdict was read. She joins us now from the courthouse in Santa Maria, California, where she has spent so much time covering this trial. Rusty?
Well, Lou, it was a very tense moment, as it always is in the courtroom before a verdict. The air is heavy. It's very difficult to really get the feel of it until you are in there. Of course, the Jackson family coming in. There were 6 members of the family that were allowed to be in court. His parents, 2 of his brothers, Randy and Tito, and there was also LaToya Jackson. Catherine Jackson, his mother, crying even before the the verdicts were read. The jury then comes in. A couple of them seemed a little tiny bit emotional. They, dabbed their eyes a little bit, and then they were somber through the reading of those verdicts. Michael Jackson really keeping his face straight forward, not showing any kind of emotion, except at one point he took a Kleenex and dabbed his eyes. Now, once the verdict started being read, and it looked as if they're going to be not guilty throughout those 10 counts, his mother began to cry, and his brothers and sisters turned around and were touching her and comforting her. Now, they were the only ones really showing any kind of reaction in court. The judge had already admonished the audience not to show any reaction, whether it was jubilation or unhappiness over a verdict, and people were really keeping to that order. So his family was showing some kind of relief, but it was very difficult to see whether Michael Jackson was showing any kind of emotion throughout the reading of these verdicts. At the end, when it was all done, he stood as the jury left. He turned, he hugged each of his attorneys at that time, and of course his family at that point were all hugging each other. Now, throughout this, the jury has been doing a press conference. This is sort of unusual. All of them, including the 8 alternates, all 20 jurors, were in the courtroom and are still taking questions from reporters. They have not been exactly forthcoming about the reasons for their decision, other than to say they did not find the family credible. A couple of them said they were angry when the mother at a couple points snapped her fingers and looked at the jury. 2 of the jurors took offense to that. One of the jurors said they had a closet full of evidence. In this case, there were 700 pieces of evidence, but they just didn't feel like they had enough to convict Michael Jackson. I had asked them, is there anything that stands out in your mind, in the testimony that made you lean one way or the other? Very reluctant to answer that. They said they kept reading the 98 pages of jury instructions, and reasonable doubt just kept jumping out at them. Lou?
The surprising thing to me was in the first answers in which these jurors basically said that they were unanimous in their view from a very early stage as to the evidence and the conclusions to draw from that evidence or lack of it. What was your reaction?
Yes, and there's a certain amount of bonding that goes on that I've seen also in the Peterson jury as well among these people. Even though they're not supposed to really be talking about the case, they're still bonding on some level, and they share a commonality, the similar culture in this area, and they all just felt there just wasn't enough evidence.
Rusty Dornan, Santa Maria, thank you very much. Joining me now with their thoughts on this case, Harlan Levy. He's former Manhattan District Attorney Harlan Levy and renowned criminal defense attorney Mickey Sherman. Let me turn to you first, Mickey. This was a tour de force for the defense, wasn't it?
No question. It was. There's no such thing as a slam dunk. But the interesting part of this was a non-African American jury.
Right.
No one can look back and say that this was another O.J. racially motivated verdict. No way. And from the comments that we've heard from these jurors, these people really gave a damn. They worked hard, and they didn't come preconceived notions. They didn't let the creepiness factor disturb them, apparently, and they didn't let us, the media, disturb them.
Now, you are, by trade, a defense attorney. Yeah. You are, by trade, I would think, it's fair to say, pro-defense on this, but you didn't think the prosecution could prevail here, did you?
No, I always felt that he was on a mission from God. From the get-go, when he gave that press conference, remember that, and he was almost giddy about it, making fun of Michael Jackson's songs, and the fact that he went through 100 search warrants. Nobody has 100 search warrants served against them. It was just something more than the average prosecution.
Harlan, as a prosecutor, this is strike two. It has been an extraordinary expenditure of money for Santa Barbara. It has been an extraordinary, painful experience for everyone involved, certainly the Jackson family, Michael Jackson obviously himself. This prosecutor has lost again. Is he on a mission from God when it comes to Michael Jackson?
Oh, yeah. Well, he wasn't only the person who made the decision to prosecute this case. He put himself out there on the front line. Now I've got to disagree a bit with my friend Mickey Sherman when he says that there was no way he was going to win this case. He got to put in this case evidence of 5 other bad acts. And I think we have a tremendous testament to the fairness of the jury system here today, that people will look beyond that. And that was part of the mission from God, that this was a bad guy. It wasn't just that he did this crime, but that he was a bad guy. And that this jury was able to look beyond that and focus on the evidence and reach the decision that it did.
Why in the world, given these 10 verdicts, in point of fact, and acquittals, why in the world wasn't this obvious to everyone involved in the prosecution team that there were serious issues, as the jurors pointed out, about the credibility of those bringing the charges, about that previous evidence, if you will, allegations at least, of wrongdoing? At what point, isn't there any safeguard for when a prosecutor becomes a zealot?
One of the things that, I'm now a criminal defense attorney in those days. I used to be a prosecutor. Everyone in my old office knew that the most sensitive area you could deal with was sex crimes and child molestation, because you had to make those screening decisions, because people lie all the time. People fabricate all the time. And the screening mechanism is the honesty and the good faith and the integrity of the prosecutors who handle the matter. And they have to be able to look at that evidence and to make a judgment and say, this is not a case where I'll proceed. It's hard, but they have to be able and willing to do that.
Same token, they could easily have come back guilty as well.
Right.
I mean, without a doubt. This was not a slam dunk in either direction. So the fact that he brought the case doesn't mean, well, you should have known better. You don't know better. He's too close to it.
These crimes that he was accused of are so heinous, so scurrilous. Does that create more care on the part of a good jury, or does it change the standard subtly?
Generally, it creates less care on the part of the jury. The jury is able to fill in the blanks or connect the dots, if you will, by their outrage factor, by the moral creepiness factor when they don't have the proof. But as Harlan points out, they had the courage and the stamina and the integrity not to do that here. Even though they had 5 other victims out there, they still stuck to what they did. As much as we hate to admit it sometimes, juries generally do the right thing.
Yeah, the question, obviously, there will not be an issue of, as you point out, a racially inspired verdict here. But there will be, I'm sure, countless discussions about celebrity justice.
Yeah, but he's a creepy celebrity. It's not like he's a good guy celebrity. So many people don't like him, and he put himself out there sleeping with young boys. This is not a not guilty by reason of celebrity case.
Do you concur?
I think celebrity justice cuts both ways. I think the other message of celebrity justice is that everybody in America deserves the best defense they can get. And the problem is not that Michael Jackson was acquitted. The problem is that there are a lot of people out there who don't get the kind of quality of vigor of representation that they need.
As everyone has complimented this juror, and we look back over this process and began in November of 2003, that then was followed by indictment by the grand jury, a trial that began at the end of January. Aren't we asking a lot of men and women in this country to stand on a jury in which a trial takes this long and disengages them from their lives? I mean, this is...
I guess not, though. They were able to do it. And they did it in a real classy way. And the statement they gave to the judge about the way that their methodology, I mean, really, really speaks well for the system.
Vicki Sherman, Harlan Levy, we thank you both for being here. The headline of the day is Michael Jackson, acquitted on all 10 counts, not guilty. And a programming note for you, Larry King Live will have an exclusive primetime interview tonight with